You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks. Happy Thursday. I had to check to make sure I knew what day it was. But I hope everybody's doing great out there. Welcome to another Dangerous Liberty Podcast, where we know that safety at the expense of liberty is slavery. We got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking to Kyle Seraphin. I might have him come on here and introduce himself in just a moment. But yeah, make sure you guys like, subscribe, all those things. Make sure you go follow us over on X. I'd like to see some more of you guys over on X following us and get some more. I might start putting a little more effort in that. I haven't quite figured out X. I don't really like the format of X, but I'm trying to spend more time on that because I do think it's a very important platform to be able to reach people and to share our message with. But I want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. Thank you guys for showing up, and we'll give everybody just a few more minutes. Everybody jumps in here. We start seeing everybody rolling here about 10 after, 5 after, something like that. I'm going to hit it again, but make sure you guys over in the chats keep it civil, act like adults, don't call anybody names, and we will keep you on the show. If you can't be an adult and can't have adult conversation without gratuitous name calling, well, you need to find another show, to say the least. But I think without further ado, we're going to bring Kyle on. Kyle, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on, man. It's great to have you.
What's going on, Gary? Good to be here. Good to be had.
Look at you. Look at this propagandist. Epstein didn't kill himself. You got no evidence of that. There's no evidence. Was weird about that whole thing.
Not even a little bit. No, everyone saw it. Actually, I heard from Dan Bongino that he killed himself in a very serious voice. It was super serious. One of my followers sent me this, and they sent me another one. And if you send me t-shirts, occasionally I will probably wear them because I have way more t-shirts than is normal, and I'll just burn through them eventually. So this had to make it. My wife is like, "Don't wear that," and I went, "That's how I know I need to wear it."
Yeah, so I was glad. Number one, you and I have stayed in touch. I had you on the show, I don't know, like a year ago or something like that, and you and I have stayed in touch, and I've enjoyed every now and then just talking shit over some text from once every now and then, and also kind of confirming and denying information. Like, hey, Kyle, is this BS or not? What's going on with this? So enjoy having you in the contact list, and maybe one day we'll get you out here, come hang out, do some shooting, and hang out a little bit. Or maybe I'll come down there and see you. I don't know. I got family down there. That's where I'm from. Tejas.
We could do it either way.
I'm going to say this again, but I'll go ahead and kind of cover it now. Folks, what we'll do is how we normally run these is we're going to have a normal podcast. Kyle and I are going to talk a little bit, and then after that, we will start going through the text or the chat over there, and we're going to prioritize the super chats, but we'll try to get into as many of your questions and comments over in the live chat as well. So, Kyle, I guess talk to everybody. For those that don't know who you are, give kind of your background, how you kind of got thrown into the media sphere, and then I guess we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to be real rushed with this because it's not the most interesting thing to talk about right now. At least not for me. So I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm an American. I was an Air Force veteran, so don't hold that against me. And I say those things because those are things that are always going to be true about me. And for a while, I was also an FBI agent. I had 6 years in the FBI, and about 14 months after that, I was unpaid and permanently suspended, not related to performance, but simply because I refused to get the COVID vaccines. And simultaneously, but totally unrelated if you ask the people that investigated it, I also brought whistleblower charges stating that Merrick Garland probably perjured himself about whether or not they were investigating parents at school board meetings, and more importantly, whether they were going to use counterterrorism resources. So I started seeing a lot of issues in the FBI almost immediately. Like my first week was there, and I was pretty turned off to what I saw and the way that people handled business. Actually, my first minute, I showed up at the FBI Academy on a Sunday, and there was like this fat black lady there with folders, and I was waiting to get smoked. I just assumed that was what was going to happen, but it did not. And that was kind of like the beginning of the disappointment. I thought we were going to experience some sort of, much more aggressive training. That was not the case. And then I got into the field And they were moments that were really good. And obviously I didn't hate the job enough to quit. There were things that were pretty fun that I got to do. I managed to get myself out of the Chinese counterintelligence program, which I did for 2 years. Absolutely despised it. Thought it was unconstitutional. Said as much. Started my first whistleblower activity within a year of being at the FBI. And so telling people, hey, I think we're breaking the law. I don't think we're allowed to do this. I'm pretty sure this is a violation of what, rule and policy.
Can you elaborate on that? What was the Chinese intelligence operation?
So I spent 18 months, 6 months or 5 months of the academy, and then whatever it was, like 19 or 20 months working this Chinese CI threat. And so I sat in the squad where we did non-criminal. So everything we did was investigations that related to zero criminality, no allegations of criminal behavior. And it was also non-US based. So these are like spies that are not in America. And they were recruiting people or co-opting people and sending folks over. And most of what I did was monitor email and Skype. And so we used what's called FISA 702, which people may have heard of, but they don't know what it is. FISA 702, and it was new to the Bureau when I got there, but I didn't know any differently. That was a change that happened at the end of Obama's term in 2016. They actually changed the way that 12333, which was the executive order that allows the NSA to do collections. It also allowed the FBI at that point in time to get raw FISA. So typically what happens is you get intelligence. That's the raw part of it. That's an intel asset, goes and gathers it. Or if it's SIGINT, somebody grabs like, an email, they grab
the equivalent of like probable cause.
Yeah, there has to actually be like a real intercept. Usually what you do in law enforcement is you get a finished product after the fact. So somebody has cooked it up. They've put it into context. They've, blacked out the names that need to be blacked out that are not going to be, involved in it and you're not supposed to see. And the FBI actually started not having any sort of filter on the raw intelligence in 2016. So by the time I started in December, and I'm at the field office, I'm getting like emails directly out of, people's email boxes. And we could jump into and look for Americans. We could literally search it like a regular database. I could go in there and type somebody's name. I could type their email address or phone number. And if we had any collection on it, I'd see it. And that's how people went looking for cases. Because if you're in the United States and you're looking for bad guys, like I don't really care if you're Chinese and doing Chinese stuff. Theoretically, as an agent, you want to find people that are in America that are compromising our country. They're selling out and doing these things. The problem is that's expressly illegal. And so people around would find reasons to be able to do it, or they would find like predication to go out and find it. They would incidentally encounter an email between these two people, and then they would nominate that person for 702 coverage as well, which means we would start collecting on now Americans because they were involved with fill in the blank asset. But 702 was designed for one thing and one thing only. And the reason I bring it up is because the bar for actually going after 702 FISA versus what they did with Donald Trump, the more aggressive, the full FISA, there's no court involved. It's the equivalent of getting a search warrant and swearing it out to a judge where the judge evaluates whether there's probable cause, whether you have enough, and then they say, yes, go ahead and get it. That's a real FISA. That's like a FISA warrant. But 702 is an administrative nomination that gets approved in your field office, and it never goes to a court. It's never seen by a judge. It's an FBI agent sending it to an FBI supervisor who signs off on it, and then you get to do it. And so you can open that up in a morning. A full FISA takes weeks and weeks, and even the ones that they have that are regularly booted up, they take a ton of time for them to go out there and substantiate every single fact pattern and where they got it. And they back it up in what's called a Woods file, which is supposed to be the check and the balance, because nobody gets to argue against the file. You just go to a secret court. Nobody knows you have it. The 702 was really scary because it was so easy and it's really, really pervasive. Yeah. And so they can get access to things that they were not supposed to. And again, I hated the mission. I didn't like what we were doing there. I didn't understand why we did. I went in famously and I asked a question of my boss and I was like, hey, what are we doing? And she's like, oh yeah, we're gathering information. And I go, oh yeah, like for what? Like, what are we going to do with it? And she was like, well, then we'll know more stuff. And I'm like, no, that's what happens when you gather information. What is the action afterwards? I have to see something kinetic that comes out of this. And she was like, well, we use it to get more information. And that actually is the most intelligence driven idea that you could ever have, that intelligence drives more intelligence. That's what collections do. And so they talk about it being a cycle, right? You've heard the intelligence cycle. Yeah. You drop it anywhere and it's circular. So for people to understand, what I started realizing is the national security sphere and what the FBI does there is a circle. It's a circle that spins off more and more circles. And eventually they're infringing on somebody's civil liberties. That's the only way that it works. It just takes a while and they'll eventually get there. Now, I absolutely hated that.
I know this isn't the subject, but I find this fascinating. Like, were there not other FBI agents there that felt the same way as you did? Like, hey, this is a clear violation of people's Fourth Amendments?
I don't think so. I don't think they did. And here's the thing, maybe because it was new, again, like that ability to query raw FISA was relatively new. I didn't know that when I went in there, and it took me leaving the FBI to go back and look and see when they updated that policy. But maybe they just didn't realize it. But I remember I failed my FISA audits. They'd come in with an attorney and sit next to me and they go, okay, like show us that you did the proper minimization of these American names. And I go, oh, okay. So they go, like, let's pull up a file. So I pull one up and I'd show it. I thought I did it right. And I'm a pretty bright guy. And I failed the audit miserably. And I was like, I don't even know how to do this thing that you've asked me to do. Like, it shouldn't be that hard to block Americans' names out so we don't have access to see them. And in reality, I went through the entire process as I understood it from the online death by PowerPoint, and I did none of them properly. So we were in bad compliance during that time. This turns out to be something that the FBI failed by millions during that time period. And then after I left, it went in front of Congress and they said they had to go fix it. And when they did, they dropped the number from millions of constitutional violations to hundreds of thousands. They had a 95% success rate. So they only had like a couple 100,000 constitutional violations a year. And Chris Wray was always touting that as being like great steps, but I hated it. So I did everything I could to get away from it. I moved on to a surveillance team, which is basically where careers go to die. It's the least prestigious thing you can do in the Bureau. It's also the most fun thing if you want to be like a regular agent and you can't find any other way to get to real work. I sat in a car, I peed in a bottle, I looked through binoculars, I talked on a radio, I chased guys at high speed, we talked to planes and had them follow, bad guys. So we had potential terrorists, we had white collar criminals occasionally, we had gangbangers, we had human traffickers, we had everything you could imagine that was going on in the national, capital region. That's what my surveillance team would do. And then we also got tapped regularly because we were so close to headquarters to fly out to other parts of the country and do surveillance in other places. So I went out to Alaska. I've done it in Pittsburgh. I've done it in Florida. I've done it in Georgia and both the Carolinas, Texas, New Mexico, like you name it. We flew out there and did stuff. And we'd go watch bad guys in a car and rental cars and chase them around and see what they were doing and take pictures and, generate actionable information for the case agents to go and build their cases. And sometimes we just babysitted bad guys like that were potentially going to be operational terrorists or whatever. What I found out was that there was a lot of attitude or a lot of appetite for white supremacy. And like your average white supremacist that the FBI investigates is like a 20-something-year-old kid on Reddit who's racist. And he has like boat shoes on and he's wearing like a plaid shirt or or he's wearing a polo and he's just kicking it at Starbucks, like with a latte, like tweeting out mean things. So it wasn't particularly impressive to see what our white supremacy mission was.
Well, that was the number one threat to national security for so long.
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting. Again, this wasn't the topic, but I think it's a really good topic to get into. And that is, let's talk a little bit about January 6th. And I'd like to hear your perspective. You and I have probably spent a total of, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes on that over the last 6 or 7 months or longer. So we haven't dived into it. And I don't even know what your perspective is of it. I'll just tell you right now, I look at January 6th when I compare and contrast it to everything that happened with George Floyd. I see January 6th as, a protest that went awry. And then the other question is, how do you characterize it? What do you think the FBI and or other intelligence roles were in this? And, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it and what you think took place there.
So at the time that January 6th goes down, I've been at the Washington field office. I got there, like I said, December of 16. So I got about 5 years total in the Bureau at that time. So, or close to it, I think that number is correct. In any case, I'm working a surveillance squad. There's a couple things that are really important. I asked for the day off on January 6th. I actually went out and shot with Scott Jelinski, and I was doing Modern Samurai Project, and I was doing a spin up on how to move to transition from irons to red dot pistols.
Red dots, yeah.
So I did a 2-day course, law instructor, like train the trainer course with Scott up in Maryland.
Yeah.
And that's relevant in so much as they gave me the time off. And what should have happened on January 6th is the thing that you do on every single major gathering and big event that happens in Washington, D.C. They declare what's called an NSSE. And that is a statutorily declared national special security event. It's actually declared by statute, and it's by policy. It's run by the Secret Service. And they do this all the time for big events. So they do it on January 20th when they do inauguration. Every year, State of the Union always gets an NSSE. Big sports games around the country will get them. If there were a big concert that had national priority or people going to be there. Charlie Kirk's funeral was an NSSE. All right. But they do them annually in certain things. The 4th of July parade is in DC is always an NSSE. And so what that is an all hands on deck option where they basically tell the federal government, we're going to pick up the bill for all local assets that want to come in. So you're going to get your crowd control guys from DC Metro PD. You're going to pay all the overtime for the people that work on overtime. You're going to get ATF special teams in to go sweep around. You're going to get Department of Energy to look for, energy weapons. You're going to have FBI boat team rolling up and down in the water on the Potomac, looking for bombs under bridges. Everybody's out. Everybody's on, and they all get on Blue Force trackers, which is useful to know. So everybody that's an asset is out there that's aware, and we can see in real time, okay, that's a U.S. Secret Service counter surveillance team. That's an FBI interview asset team. It's a pair of FBI agents rolling out. Oh, that's a vehicle. That's our SWAT tactical and so on. So NSSEs are a big deal because they're both a force multiplier with money, but it also gives you like a command and control nexus where the headquarters unit can actually see what's going on. The command post that sets up, usually at Secret Service, and then everybody has their own individual CPs. You can really track what's happening in an event. And that's how you set up for major crowds in DC. January 6th was not that. And that was always my first question. Why? Why was it not? I also was part of the riot responses that happened throughout 2020. So I was based out of Washington, D.C. in Washington Field office. We went in for the George Floyd riots, which I call the BLM or Antifa stuff. I was there the day after they drove Donald Trump into the bunker. When they lit, St. John's Church on fire, the next morning, me and my guys are out there in covert vehicles wearing FBI body armor, standing there with rifles slung and making sure that we connected like enough of a standoff that Secret Service Uniform Division could actually build up the fencing behind us. They put up all the anti-scale. So I saw all of that, and I know exactly how aggressive the response was by the federal government into those people. And the answer was like very, very little. I was also in Portland 5 years ago, probably this week. I was there at the end of September and the beginning of October in 2020. So I went out and saw the tail end of the 100 days of riots and the attacking of the courthouse. And I saw what anarchy looked like in a city. And they were under siege. I mean, every single business that you saw in Portland was all boarded up with like oriented strand board, or they had, plywood up, and they were leaving messages, we're with you. We stand with the protests. Like, don't break the Apple store down and steal all of our stuff. They were definitely complicit and compliant. And then you saw what happened on January 6th. And what I saw was a bunch of pissed off Americans, including people who were FBI agents, by the way, who were off duty, and some FBI employees and a bunch of federal employees, a bunch of people in the military showed up on leave, and they did what they're allowed to do. They had a First Amendment appropriated and permitted event. And then at some point in time after 1 o'clock, I think that's what the timeline is. I'm not an expert on it, but there was obviously a riot. It obviously got started in a small space. From everything we can tell, the rioters, this is something that people get really contentious about, but my buddy Steve Baker, who was arrested over January 6th, he's over at the Blaze. He's tracked all the footage. He's seen more of the surveillance footage than anybody alive, as far as I could tell. And he was able to determine, like the first blood was drawn by the protesters. They started the first aggressive movements, but that didn't mean that they were the first people. Like, that was on the timeline. There were other instances where Capitol Police started striking after the first blows got done. I saw a riot that got out of hand. I saw an understaffed Capitol Police, which are, look, U.S. Capitol Police are like glorified security guards. They're not law enforcement in any meaningful way. They don't have investigative divisions, and they're really not actually set up for riots. They bring in DC Metro for that. So I saw something get out of hand that looked super suspicious, and I saw an FBI caught flat-footed in an investigative posture, and they did not know what was going on. And that seems really problematic. It also seems very intentional. But the question always was, who was the first mover? Did the FBI launch this sort of, thing? I think the issue is that everybody knows the CIA. So if something happens in the intel world, it's the CIA, right? I think we were talking about that before we went live. The same kind of thing. If something happens in the federal world, it must have been the FBI. But that's because they don't know that HSI is a thing. They don't know about DSS. They don't know about what ATF may be doing, or DEA, or any of the other sort of projects that are out there. There's agencies that I don't even know the name of that are working out underneath Homeland Security.
100%.
People are running around doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And what I think happened, I think that people who are sensible about compartmentalization and the way that compartmented operations work, you would be foolish to have the FBI instigate a riot and then turn around and be the investigative agency. That's the dumbest thing you could do, because there's a lot of guys like me out there. Maybe they don't have the same sense that they could walk away from the job, but I don't think there's enough radical liberal, totally on board for whatever the shenanigans are, like insane leftists that work in the FBI agent corps. Now, you can
there's
find
still
that
some percentage of reasonable, sensible people in the FBI.
I would say it like this. Imagine this. Like, I think that conservatives are the majority of the FBI agents. Conservatives are libertarians, like people who don't really care. But I think they're the minority of FBI employees, if that makes sense, because agents are only 14,000 of the 38,000. So I think it doesn't make sense operationally that you would have the FBI kick it off and then also go and investigate it. That's the shortest version of it. The longer version is, I thought for a long time that DHS was probably more likely to be involved because they don't have any of the rules. The FBI, the DEA, the ATF, they all work under DOJ, and DOJ has a thing called the DIOG, which people can go read. It's open source. So the Domestic Operations Investigations Guide is how you run these investigations. I'm seeing your chat say things about Waco and Ruby Ridge. What's funny is Waco and Ruby Ridge were ATF.
ATF operations.
Yeah. The ATF launched those because they were about to get disbanded in the 90s. They were about to lose status as an agency, and they went and did a big op to try to get something, and the FBI ended up mopping it up and making it worse. So, there's all, you can go back in the history. Look, the FBI has sins in every single decade. Don't get me wrong. They lie about their birthday. They tell you they were founded in 1908. The FBI was started in 1935. I don't know why they lie about it, but they do. I knew that at the academy. Like, I was in the Air Force. The Air Force does not claim the Army Air Corps as the birth of the Air Force, right? They do it in 1947. They go, aha, when we became the Air Force. The FBI became the FBI in 1935, but they tell you they started in 1908. That's weird. There were crimes before 1935 that the FBI got involved in. Like, the Palmer raids were widely thought of as unconstitutional. The funny thing is that when the FBI did unconstitutional, like basically constitutional violations, they were almost always civil liberties related. And they almost always went after people on the left for a very long time, until like the 80s and the 90s. And then you had the PatCon and some of the other big pushes towards people. It's where the money was. It's not about ideology. I think the FBI chases like funding. I think they chase money and targets of opportunity. And it's not based on like, oh, like we're all lib and we're going to go do this libby thing. Because at the beginning of the GWAT, they were going after Muslims. Yeah. And you would have had people on the left that were very, very upset about that. And then suddenly at the end of the GWAT, they're going after white guys who are tweeting on Reddit. So the logic stream has to follow. And I think that's what went on. But DHS doesn't have those rules for whatever it's worth. Now I'll add some like really ugly stuff, which I told you when I was talking earlier today. Mm-hmm. My buddy Steve Baker is fairly convinced that this had something to do with DOD assets that were embedded in the crowd and the possibility that people got spun up on it. And I don't want to get too deep into it with you.
Let me ask you this. Let me just ask you this. Do you feel like there was some sort of federally chartered, mandated provocateurs in that crowd?
I'll be careful with it only because I don't have evidence of it.
Sure.
I think that crowd did not behave the way that crowds of people who think the way that I do necessarily would have without any kind of push. Yeah. So I think a nudge is definitely within the possibility. I think that I don't have evidence of any particular agency getting involved. So without evidence, it's silly for me to speculate on that. Sure. There are people who think they do. But I also have seen other protests that have happened from the left and the right. I've seen the left categorically be significantly more violent, especially during 2020. And even if people on the right said, you know what, we're going to push back a little bit and we're pissed, I don't think that the government reaction was reasonable. And I will say that it was so overblown, especially from the FBI's end, because there were people in the FBI's command post that were saying, this is our 9/11. Not like this is the worst thing that's ever happened, as in this is what we're going to build our careers on. And we're all going to write to this in our, when you're enlisted, you get like a what do they call it? Like an EPR?
Enlisted record brief.
So when you have an FBI agent, they do a 954, which can include the classified projects you worked on and all the things that you're proud of. It's basically like me, myself, and I saved the world, and here's how we did it. And so you write these things up in an internal sort of resume. And they all wrote January 6th stuff on their 954s. And
you're talking about a DD-214 is what you were kind of referencing.
It's internal. So when you're applying for new jobs within the FBI, you it's your internal resume that follows you. It's sort of like your ongoing, your build of like, what have I done? And how have I done a great job? And so people put 954 bullet points about January 6th because they were excited about supervising the largest case that's ever been on the history of the FBI. And we, did the biggest response and the biggest manhunt, and we have the most number of arrests and the biggest number of convictions, all those other BS. And all of that was predetermined because they were super amped up to do this because it was a target of opportunity. So the FBI clearly was weaponized to go after people, but I don't think it was because they were conservatives. I think it was because there's funding. They were running out of like terrorism funding on the what's called International Terrorism Operations section side. So they didn't have a lot of bad guys coming in from overseas, and they needed domestic terrorism.
Well, let me ask you this: if that's the case, if Because it sounds like you're kind of basically saying, hey, this wasn't politically driven. This was career driven, funding driven. Why didn't they take that same opportunity to go after people on the left when we're talking about all the BLM riots?
So there's two reasons I think for that. And that also has to do with the way the FBI has dramatically shifted over the years. Since 9/11, the FBI became more and more interested in intelligence operations and doing intelligence collection. And accordingly, they also brought in a bunch of intelligence cadre. And you know, and I know there's two different types of people in the world. And especially like on the federal law enforcement / whatever US government side, intel people are more indoor dogs. They're more interested in sitting at a desk and putting together spreadsheets and, building out charts and connections and so on. And so you got people that had advanced degrees. At the minimum, they had bachelor's degrees, but a lot of them had masters or they had PhDs in specific kind of like national security fields. And when you have that, they had more time to be leftist indoctrinated. They were around education. It's not it's not a knock on them. I don't have to attack them personally for it, but they spent a bunch of time around good universities. And then they came to this job, which is looked at as being prestigious, and they're left leaning. So you've got this leftist thing that defines what the threat is. That's defined by intelligence. Then you have the guys that actually go out and do the arrest. And look, we had cases against people in Portland. We knew the entire map of who was on Antifa, like on their roster. We had embedded assets in those protests that were doing long-term. They're called the Fly Team. So they're like one of the special mission teams that the US that the FBI has. You got HRT that does like hostage rescue and spent a bunch of time like kicking around over in Afghanistan for some reason and Iraq because they needed to justify their mission. The Fly Team was actually set up to do that. Their job was sensitive site exploitation, tag along, be your pain in the ass FBI guy on one of your ODAs or whatever, and go collect evidence and then exploit it back for like US Nexus.
Yeah.
And those guys were embedded in the crowd like for weeks. They were sleeping on the ground with these people, hanging out in the flop houses. Like they were legit doing with a real legend, semi-undercover type work. And so they were infiltrated there, but we weren't able to ever move against any of the targets that were in Portland because you have a left-leaning United States Attorney's Office, left-leaning management, left-leaning intel people that don't categorize Antifa as an actual threat. It's an ideology or whatever nonsense they were saying then. And so all of that really worked against it. And they were 100% cool with calling J6, not just a riot, but a white supremacy and an uprising, and an insurrection, all that crap. Yeah. So all that stuff was driven by the intel side. It wasn't driven by the agent side. And then let's talk about the 274 number. I think that's probably what has to be addressed because it's not correct. It's just, it's like,
first of all, tell everybody what the 274 number is. It was a number that was just recently released. And so basically there, folks, there was if you haven't heard about it, and this is one of the things that I when I was talking to Kyle on the phone, I'm like, all right, so, there was a recent report that said there was 274 different FBI assets specifically within the crowd of J6. So kind of clarify that. What's your thoughts on the validity of that? I don't even know where that number came from.
So it came from a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet was part of the FBI Washington field office where I used to work, after action report. All right. Yep. So the AAR serves one purpose. It's a look at ourselves. How did we do and how can we improve? But if you're in government, generally you're not trying to do that. That's improve. That's a military thing. Like the sustains and improve game, that's military. In the government, it's like, how great did we do and how much more money do we need to do more greatness? Right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. So first we have to consider who created the spreadsheet and who created the after action. It was FBI management, and they're not looking to point themselves badly. And in fact, there's some critical comments. What they did is they solicited every single person in the field office. Hey, how did we do for January 6th? And they gave an anonymous survey. And a lot of us just blew it off because like, you sucked. That was really obvious, but I'm not going to write that. Some people actually took it seriously, and they laid out, here's what we thought was problematic. Here's where some of the sustains and improves things that we think are out there. One of my buddies wrote a very, very sarcastic and a very biting criticism, and he was fired a couple of months later on very unrelated charges, but didn't make any sense when they got rid of him. Yeah. So he was unmasked right away. So if you go and read it, actually his comment on that document, if people go find it, John Solomon at Just the News published it. Comment number 11 is my friend Phil Kennedy's comment. Like I was like, oh, I've read that before. So what they did is in there's a matrix of all the different FBI assets that were deployed for January 6th in any capacity. And they broke it down by category of jobs. So agents, then they had intel analysts, and then they had miscellaneous support personnel. And they had something else like, they had attorneys, which are also agents, by the way. So they were called CDCs or ADCs. So when people go read that matrix, you can find out there were 274 agents that were deployed And it got this headline because John Solomon spun it out there and Donald Trump spun it up even bigger on Truth Social and said 274 FBI agents were in plain clothes in the crowd. But that's a misnomer and a misunderstanding of what you're looking at. And again, you can already tell because who released it? The FBI. Who wants to look good? The FBI. Who did they make the spreadsheet for? Themselves and maybe to Congress to be able to go justify more funding. Like, look, this bad thing happened. Remember, it was created in January of 2021. That's when the Biden administration's coming in. They've got a very left-leaning Congress that's going to like celebrate them as heroes. So saying we had a bunch of agents respond to January 6th was a politically good move for them. And what you saw was the field office that I worked out of sent out to about a third of the agent population, hey, we need you to respond to the Capitol in some capacity. Some people showed up in what's called evidence response teams or ERT. Some people showed up in a tactical situation. The Washington SWAT team showed up and they have like 60 something guys, 2 different teams, Alpha and a Bravo, and they've got a couple of different sticks on each one of those. So I think that's how they organize themselves. It was always kind of lame. I wasn't a big fan of like that. I used to do medic stuff for the SWAT guys. I remember sitting and telling them a couple days afterwards, because we were sitting on our bags like in the basement of the building in case something else went down over the next few days when they locked down Washington, D.C. And I'm like, hey, if you guys ever get a hit on my house, like just call me ahead and I'll come out. Like you don't have to come into my house. And they go, well, why would we get a hit on your house? I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm just saying, like, if you ever have to show up at my house, just call me and I'll come out. I was like, I don't want to kill like half of you guys trying to come in through my door. Cause like I will, because if you don't tell me, I'm just going to assume something bad's happening. There's protesters and weird stuff that happens in my neighborhood. So we had this real funny conversation and it was kind of a little bit awkward because those guys felt really proud about going into the Capitol and knocking down protesters and picking fist fights with them because a couple of these guys did. And that's what those assets are. The 274 is not embedded undercovers. Now, remember, Chris Wray went in front of Congress and he said there were no undercover assets from the FBI in the crowd. This is a game that they play. I know for a fact that they were FBI agents that were off duty that were in that crowd because I talked to some of them and I told some of them that it wasn't a great idea to go out there and they did it anyway. I know from a friend of mine who was a DEA agent who got arrested for January 6th that his brother, who was an FBI agent, was there in the crowd, armed, off duty, just protesting and were, doing the thing they're allowed to do under the First Amendment. Right. So there's 100% chance that they were FBI agents that were out there in that crowd. But again, for the compartmentalization, I don't think they were the ones doing it. And believe me, if I could punch the FBI right in the nutsack, I would do it every day. Right. I just don't believe it because it doesn't make any sense to me that would be the case. That 274 number is most likely a large response of a field office trying to justify that they sent like a quarter of the physical assets that they had that were agents into the fray before midnight, and it turned over to January 7th because they wanted credit for every single person that they could say that they responded to because they can ask for more funding. Right. And it actually, I think it's as innocuous as that. I think it's as dumb as that. And I think that it got blown out of proportion because a plainclothes FBI agent is just an FBI agent. There's no uniform for the FBI. Like right. You probably know that too, but like there's no uniform. They don't give you a uniform.
Yeah. I mean, you're always undercover if you want to compare it to a uniformed whatever.
Yeah. You're not even undercover. You're just low visibility. You're just a guy. You're just a Fed. And like, you're probably wearing stupid tactical pants so we can see you. Like we know.
So basically that document essentially is number one, to cover your ass in that, hey, look, we responded to this. Yep. And these are all the assets that we threw at this. By the way, it'd be really nice that, we could prevent something like this in the future if we had more people and more money and all these other things. This is normal for folks. If you've ever worked for a federal agency, this is how things are done. And, I think it's hilarious that you're talking about, these internal surveys that take like, hey, you know what? We definitely want you to be honest with us and tell us how we're doing and identify the problems. And man, it is a honeypot for firing MFers real quick. Cause
they're like, tie your own noose.
Always happens.
Throw it over your head.
If you're truthful on that, the next thing you know, they're in there and like, hey, you know what? We see that you came in late, like a year ago, 3 different times.
That's right.
And next thing you know, you're packing your bags. You're like, what just happened? And it's
So my buddy got kicked out for poor performance that they did what's called a PIP, a performance improvement plan. They pipped him over a statistical analysis that he was constantly consulting PhD level data scientists at the Hoover building, which is not the job of an FBI agent. And he was creating this breakout discussion of how recruiting was being done across the country. It was basically they fired him over a statistically irrelevant brochure that they didn't think he got his numbers right. And the data scientists were like, dude, you're killing it. He has an MBA and he's an accountant. He's a super sharp guy. But after 14 years in the FBI, like if you're not doing a good job at the job that is doing data scientist number, they just find you a job. They spent millions of dollars on upping your clearance and training you and paying you for the last 14 years and getting you through the academy and all this stuff. You don't fire people at 14 years in unless they do something really egregious. And his was literally a survey. And then he had this female boss that was looking to collect some scalps. I want to address one real quick thing because I saw it flow by in the chat. The undercover piece that Chris Ray talks about, undercover is a certification in the FBI. So imagine when you hear Chris Ray under oath, because it's going to come up in the next couple months. We're going to hear it more and people are going to agitate about it and they're not going to indict him over it because undercover is a very specific term. So to be certified as an undercover, you have to go through the undercover school and then you walk out and then you're UC certified. So those are FBI undercovers. Me with even like a fake ID, which I can get through the government and I'm in plain clothes and I represent you and you meet me and you're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh dude, I drive a truck for a living. If I were to lie to you and just tell you a fake backstop story that has no backstop, it's like nominally at best. I can do that and I'm not undercover per the FBI. Now you would look at it and be like, that FBI agent told me some BS. He made up a fake story and he said he's not undercover when we get discovery. That's because I wasn't an undercover. So when he says it,
semantic game.
Imagine it like this. If you said, hey, did you have any soldiers that were at that riot? And they'd be like, bro, there was not a single infantryman there at that entire riot. And you're like, okay, so no soldiers. And it's like, there was absolutely no infantrymen that attended that riot. And you're like, got it. Okay. They're talking past each other and he's doing it on purpose. He's using a semantic cop out to get away, talking about a program. And that's the difference, I think, when people would look at it. It's the same reason when they should be doing what we would call entrapment. I made this allegation to Congress. I said the FBI does these CT cases and they're morally equivalent to entrapment. So that if I briefed you on the case, Gary, you'd be like, that sounds like entrapment. I'd be like, yeah, that sounds like entrapment. That's what my problem is. Yeah. But legally, they skirt the definition because they have these little criteria. If it was your idea in the first place and I gave you an out and I told you like at some point you didn't have to do it, then I've avoided the entrapment thing. That's the legal definition and the attorneys will charge you. But like you told me you wanted to do something bad and I'm like, oh, do you really? Like I'll help you. How much money do you have? Oh, like I can do it for $800. Can you? Yeah. And I know for a fact that you got $850 in your bank account because I've already done I've done a subpoena on your bank records. So if I were to go and set you up for something, but it was your idea in the first place, it's not entrapment. Although if any of your audience were to read it, they'd be like, dude, that's what entrapment looks like. That's the Gretchen Whitmer thing. Yeah, it looks like entrapment to any of us.
Ruby Ridge.
All these things look like entrapment. Well, Ruby Ridge was even worse than that. I mean, that was even dumber. It's a freaking short barrel shotgun, like for a bench warrant. Why are you sending in a tactical team into a mountain stronghold? Everything about that was dumb.
Yeah, no. So I guess really what it comes down to is I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I understand you don't have 100% proof or whatever, but your perspective, knowing what right looks like, and then knowing what normal looks like, and knowing and seeing what took place and how everything was prosecuted with DC. And on top of that, some of the things that we talked about, some information you have, your conjecture, speculation, just a bird's eye view of it is you think there were potentially government assets in that crowd trying to provoke basically what took place there.
I think that's more likely than not, but being able to pin down what those assets were by department is where it gets real sketchy for me. And that's why I always push back when people say, it was the FBI. I'm like, that's just because you only know the FBI. It was probably someone else because the FBI did the investigation. An umbrella term. Yep.
Yeah.
To say that the feds kicked it off, I think that's probably not inaccurate. Again, no evidence, but a lot of shenanigans were pretty obvious for those watching on the outside. And by the way, a lot of FBI agents think that too.
Well, what do you think Ray Epps was?
I go back and forth on Ray Epps. I think some people are really dumb, and it's hard for me to overestimate how dumb people can be, because I find that regularly people do things that are completely illogical, especially when you're in a crowd and you're feeling the vibe. Like, I don't know, there's an energy that happens when things, and there was an energy in 2020. At the end of 2020 and the beginning of 21, there were a lot of Americans that were pissed off.
Yeah, there were.
There was some righteously angry people that I'm shocked that there were no weapons and there was not bloodshed the way there could have been on that day. Because it could have been really, really ugly, really fast. Which also leads me to more, if people were serious about taking that Capitol building, men who think like guys we know, it wouldn't have been a difficult move.
No,
like they wouldn't have stood a chance. So I don't know about Ray Epps specifically in so much as he obviously had connections to DHS. He certainly could have been a hip pocket source. The FBI went out and said he is not, he was not an FBI asset. And he was never on the FBI payroll. Yeah. Okay, fine. So you paid him through DHS. Maybe you paid him through HSI or something else. There's a lot of ways you could put somebody on or off the books. And I would not be shocked to find that guy, let me tell you why that is, lest people understand otherwise. When you're a counterterrorism source for the FBI specifically, but I'm sure this is broadly speaking for federal law enforcement, you make money when there are cases. You have to generate a case. Something has to happen, and there has to be an arrest. There has to be an action, and they need to be able to say your actions on this day resulted in fill in the blank case, which results in more funding for us, which means we're going to pay you out in cash. And by the way, they pay you in cash. So CT sources, counterterrorism sources inside the United States specifically, that is a very lucrative gig. There's not a ton of them that are making big money, but they are making six figures when they're doing a good job at this. And they'll be assets at large. Like the FBI has some of these people that are literally professional sources. They get paid off book in cash and they run around the world. Like the FBI will train them. They'll take them to Scotland and they'll go do a land navigation course. They'll take them, somewhere in Africa and teach them how to do stuff. And then they bring them back to the US and they'll go and embed with these groups. And they've got cool backstories and legends. They've got skills and so on. And they get paid big money. And Whitmer was a good example of that. People were getting paid tens of thousands of dollars for BS, for a BS case against people that were a non-real threat. So a Ray Epps could very easily look like what you'd expect. Like he's not getting paid if people don't go do the thing that needs to be done on that day for him to get paid. And if his handler was like, we're looking for, any violence, like that's what we're really interested in hearing about. You don't have to task him with inciting. You can tell him, the thing that we are looking and most interested in is violent patriot groups that are going to go and storm the U.S. Capitol. And we have some intel that it may happen. And he's like, cool, that's the payday. I've been doing this long enough. That's how I get paid. So I don't know that to be a fact, but that's how those people work, just broadly speaking.
It's the same with sources that we were using constantly overseas. They would come up with all kinds of cool stories where they would come feed us intel, we'd pay them, and then come to find out, it's BS. But the other thing I find interesting, number one, Ray Epps, I find it very odd that out of all the people that were prosecuted for the most minor of things and absolutely no involvement, but yet you have Ray Epps on camera and he was never prosecuted. I think that's very problematic when you look at it from the outside. The other issue that I have there that you're talking about that people don't realize is when you have these types of sources, assets that are out there, they absolutely can create these fake cases and get people. It's entrapment. They're creating entrapment situations where the FBI has plausible denied or whatever investigating.
No, you're exactly right.
So they're the ones that are actually creating that entrapment, and then they just like, hey man, we got him, bring him over here. Look, he's already doing this.
Brad, we find that all the time because they'll turn in their friends for cash. Like these people, first of all, people who want to be sources, especially in criminal cases, they tend to be kind of scummier people. The people in the CT world can be scummier. It's kind of a mixed bag. The people in the CI world tend to be like academics and business people. So you have these different categories and tiers of human beings you're going to work with. But CT sources range the whole gamut. And 100%, they can set it up. They can set up a buddy or someone that they made friends with intentionally with the purpose that they know that they're going to get paid if there is a solid case that is made on this person. And, they'll befriend somebody and betray them horribly. And to the point you make about Ray Epps not being charged, I do think that's a really suspicious piece. I don't have any evidence to say this with certainty, but I would say that it is far more probable than not that he's in somebody's source room. I don't think it was the FBI's because they actually went in front of Congress and said no, which puts them on the point where that could be discoverable and you have a potential perjury. I think the odds are very high that somebody recruited him at some point in time, whether he was active or otherwise, and it was going to be a major black eye if they went out there and had to say hey, by the way, a-holes, he was in our source room. He used to report to us. And now and the reason is because then you discredit all the cases before.
Yeah.
That's the black eye. If your source goes to jail for doing the thing that he was doing for you previously, it discredits the previous operation. So whether it's a DHS entity, whether he was working for DEA, whether he was doing something with the guys down on the border because he was an Arizona guy, I think it's a high probability that he had some, either he was a hip pocket source or he was an official source that would have been a black eye to some agency. And so somebody got the hands off. That's what it looks like from my end. Again, that's my opinion. Nobody should sue me over that.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about getting over to Charlie Kirk. I think it was really important to kind of lay some of that out. And number one, I was very curious about some of those cases. I think either directly or indirectly play into what we're dealing with Charlie Kirk. I mean, the fact of the matter is, and I think rightfully so, we have multiple federal agencies that have lost all credibility with the American people. And I think that's what we see anytime, whether we're talking about Butler, J13, whether we're talking about Charlie Kirk, and I mean, we can go down the list. We've enumerated all the times that we know for a fact that we are being lied to for a fact. And then on top of that, why people have the reaction that they have to the information that's being put out in other cases, whether or not those are related and whether or not we're getting the truth or not. So, one of the things that I've noticed, and, having worked for the federal government, having been involved in some different things, and, knowing guys like you, having trained a lot of law enforcement and working as a instructor for a federal agency on the tactics side, I know how some of these things work, right? And I see a lot of people coming to bad conclusions based on assumptions that are just incorrect, right? So if we start out with a bad foundation of information, we can jump from one thing to the next. And I see a lot of bad assumptions coming from the way that this is being investigated. I think there's legitimate criticism that people can talk about and should. And I do think that the public should pay attention to this, because that's what we do, is that we're the ones that are going to be able to hold the federal government accountable if and when they're doing shady shit behind the scenes, right? That's really what it comes down to. But that being said, I think there is an unreasonable expectation in a lot of these situations, and I think that's very specific to this. So if you will, just kind of take a kind of overview of what you see going on with Charlie Kirk and what your kind of criticism, if there is any, of how the FBI is handling this case, because I think people are wanting a lot of information really quickly that I don't think we're ever probably going to get in some of it. And explain
you will.
Kind of standard operating procedures, I guess.
Sure. So the zoom out and my analysis of what people want now, and the sort of loss of credit of institutions across this country burned all their credibility with the American people in the last 10 years. And so that's law enforcement has done it for sure. They were terrible on COVID across the board, state, local, and federal did a bad job. You saw people in the media lose credibility. That's been going on for a long time. We saw our governmental legislators and so on.
Hold on real quick. I do want to address this.
Sure.
All right. And this is going to be the last and only one that I ever address when it comes to all caps. If you want my attention, you can get it. So Kane said, you said there's an unrealistic expectation for the truth of who killed Charlie. That's not what I said at all. All right, Kane, if you're going to be immature and silly, no, there's an unrealistic expectation of information flow that would damage the ability to pick a jury to be able to prosecute whoever is going to ultimately be charged. Right now, that looks like Tyler Robinson. So do not put words in my mouth. Don't twist what I say. Be an adult and act like it, because I'm just going to ban you, because if you're not going to be reasonable and you're not going to be an intelligent person, we're going to move on, right? All right, go ahead.
That goes to this emotional reaction that people are having right now, though, because once you destroy credibility, again, media, legislators, law enforcement, who else? Pharmaceutical companies, people, doctors we used to be able to trust, hospital system, all this stuff. People are sketched about all of it, and they don't want to believe what they see. And so they had two roads, and I think we talked about this before we went live, but these two roads are pretty real. Road number one is, you lied to me. Everyone's lying to me. You have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt to me. I need evidence. I distrust all things default. That's the skeptic position. That's the right position, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. You'll always be safe as a skeptic.
Yep.
You'll never get conned into things. You always think everyone's lying to you. That's okay. You won't be very fun at parties, though, just for whatever it's worth. The alternative is, everyone lies to me. I can lie to myself just as easily. Whatever I say is good enough, and I'm just going to go with it. I thought it, and therefore it's real. And that's a really dangerous place to live. And then you end up jumping from lily pad to lily pad, and you're out in the middle of the pond by yourself on crazy shit that just came out of your brain, and there's absolutely no grounding for it, not in factual reality or anything else. So that's a real possibility too. What I think the 30,000-foot view on is, there was a horrible incident that I think a lot of Americans are having a difficult time processing, because we didn't grow up in an era of political assassination.
Yeah.
And I think it damaged the generation that saw that happen in the 60s and the 70s when people started killing major political figures that had huge followings and people felt very close to because they seen them on television for the first time. They felt like that person was invited into their home in the same way Charlie Kirk was on your phone, and he was a radio show, and he was a podcast that you downloaded every day. So not me, but people felt very close to this man. And he's young, and he's a father, and he's charismatic, and he's intelligent, he's articulate, and he seems very kind in the way that he actually even deals with people. He's not, he's not a pushover, but he's doing all the things that we think that people should be doing in America. And he's super successful doing so, right? And he gets killed, and he's 31 years old, and he's got 2 little babies. That,
in a horrific way, in a very public, horrific way, by the way. The
public thing of it is so problematic. I mean, if he had died in a poisoning, like we'd have all these questions. If he had died in a car accident, people would be sad forever about it. But it wasn't the same thing as watching somebody say, someone decided, I'm going to go, whoever that person was. And I think the most likely thing is the person that they've actually arrested. And I'll tell you why. But, somebody decided, I'm going to turn this guy's lights off because he's having a talk with kids at a college. And, we haven't seen that in this country. And this is how I used to remember. The first thing was like, oh, it was in a professional assassination. You remember all those things? Like, we're only 3 weeks away from this thing, but everyone was like, it was obviously a professional hit. I'm like, really? It's somebody who makes a living taking long range rifle shots or 100+ yard rifle shots. Like, how many of those have you seen? How much living could you do on that? Like, you've only seen one. I don't want to make light of it, but that's not a real threat that Americans deal with. We work about it with the president. And, people who have very specific protective details have to look for rooftops. But dudes who are talking on college campuses are not scanning rooftops for some a-hole with a long rifle. It's just not a thing. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. And the answer is because it hasn't happened. You can't think of another example of it. Not in this country. So
and it's not the most likely threat. It just isn't. And it hasn't been.
It's a movie. It's Mark Wahlberg in Shooter. I mean, it's just not a real thing. It's not how you would do it. It's not how professionals get work like that done. If you're gonna have a wet work team, they're gonna make it not look like there was a wet work team. That's the whole key. And for all the people saying, well, they wanted it to look like an assassination. Well, no, they didn't. That's not how they do business. Sorry, that's just not how it works. So I look at this guy and this horrific thing. So like I said, difficult processing, and then we had screw ups, but not the screw ups that everybody thought were the screw ups. And that's probably what we'll hone in on. Part of it is what was actually done in the charging document, because there's evidence that you guys don't have. For all the people that are out there doing internet sleuthing, you're not entitled to this investigation material now. And the reason why is exactly what Gary said. You will bias and taint a jury pool to the point where whoever they try to prosecute will get off, period. There are Supreme Court case precedents that say if you actually convict somebody with a bad jury pool, they'll overturn the conviction, period.
Yeah.
100%.
Real quick, I just want to throw this up again, folks. The way that we're going to do this, we're going to talk through all this stuff. Again, you guys, we are going to get to your questions. We will prioritize the super chats. If you want to throw that up, I promise you we will cover it. But I want to get through as much of this, and I think a lot of this will answer a lot of questions. There'll be plenty of those questions when we get done with this. But I just want to kind of keep moving before we get too distracted with too many questions. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Like there's obviously some of the things, and I know one of the things you talked about, we did this the other night, but I think it would be good to kind of refresh and kind of go back through potentially the charging documents. If you'd like to start there, Kyle.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's also address the fact that the July 13th event where you've got this guy who, by the way, we could learn everything about, and they could show us all that information, because you're not going to prosecute a guy that died on the rooftop. We had, what was his name? Crooks.
Yep.
And we know very, very little about the guy.
Thomas Crooks.
And that seems totally illogical to me. And again, that's what happens when you have an intel agency that's also doing law enforcement. The FBI keeps secrets. Like, you don't hear about CIA ops either, but it's just because they don't think they owe it to you. They don't think they answer to you. It's not because they're necessarily trying to be squirrely, although they are. But that's just sort of the way the OPSEC in that world works. They don't think that the American people are entitled to it. And by the way, they don't think they have to go through legal process to get information. So oftentimes what you'll find is that when you're an intel agency, you don't have to go through a search warrant. You don't have to go through like a subpoena to a grand jury. No, you literally do what's called an NSL. It's a secret subpoena, and your boss signs it. And so they can get all kinds of information in different ways, and they think they're entitled to it, which is why that FISA program I worked at the beginning really bothered me. It's a cultural shift when you think you're entitled to, like, looking in Gary's emails to see if he's talking to Russian spies. Like, that's not a good world. So I think what happened with Crooks, though, is people for the first time that were really unhinged, who assumed that this was not a real thing, that you could shoot somebody from 100 or 200 or 300 yards away like you do in a movie.
Yeah.
That was the first time I've ever seen it. Actually, someone tried it, and he almost got away with it.
Yeah.
And I do think that broke a pane of glass that you can't recover from. And I think that that what happened in Utah was the second pane, and it opens up a real dark place. So a lot of people, I think, are fixating on the like the mechanics of this conspiracy or what they believe or whatever went on, because the alternative is focusing on the reality that a 31-year-old father was shot in a very public way by a not particularly well-trained person, like some regular kid, because getting a rifle in this country and shooting 200 yards is like a no-brainer for literally millions of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that changes.
Well, I do think you touched on something that is a real problem. And that is, I do think that federal agencies, and I've experienced this, by the way, like I know agents that I can tell you from firsthand experience feel this way. There is a certain disdain that federal agencies have for the idea that they're accountable to the American people.
Oh yeah.
And they think they're here and all these peons are down here, and they feel like they are way up here in the pecking order, and these peasants down here are going to do whatever they're told. And there's a real attitude with that with the federal government, and it's part of why there's such a blowback right now against federal agencies, because they don't feel like they're accountable, both at the individual level as well as, you know, the overall agency level, or even to Congress for that matter, by the way.
I think all of that is correct. That is a cultural rot. I used to do this thing when new agents would come to the office. I would make them come and do role playing with me, and I'll make fun of this guy who came in. One of the last guys I did this with, he pops in, and I don't know why FBI agents say things like, your name came across my desk, but it must be taught at the academy now. Because this guy comes in, I'm like, hey, do a knock. Like, we're going to role play back and forth so you don't embarrass me when we go out in public and knock on somebody's door to talk to them. I just don't want you to be weird. And federal agents don't know how to talk. A lot of them, they're real awkward. Like, they come from backgrounds in IT, or they come from, you know, accountants or lawyers, but they're just not.
Well, they're just right out of college. Like,
they're just, they're just not. They're not the person you think they are. And what's funny is, if you were going to have me recruit, I would go get a bunch of former cops. I'd have a couple of guys from the military that have a certain personality type, and I would grab a lot of like former salespeople. I would get people that can talk on the phone, that can talk in person, because they know how to keep people talking. And that's what the job is really about. It's not about shooting. It's not about running. It's not tackling bad guys. It's mostly about, can you talk to people and elicit information in a useful way? So I make this guy do this knock and talk thing. He's like, knock, knock. I'm like, hey, how's it going? Like, who are you? And he's like, yo, you know, I'm Max. And I'm like, hey, Max, what can I do for you? And he's like, oh, I'm at the FBI. I was like, congratulations. And he just looks at me and he's like, he just freezes. And I go, what can I do for you, Max? And he's like, well, your name came across my desk. And I'm like, well, how does that work? And he was like, how does what work? I'm like, the name. Do you have like a conveyor belt? Like, is there like a ticker like on Wall Street? Like, why is my name on your desk? Max, what are you here for? What can I do for you, buddy? And he was like, can we try this again? I was like, dude, stop being weird. Just knock and say, hey, I investigate, you know, terrorist threats in the United States. We had an allegation that you made an online threat. I'd like to talk to you about it and dismiss it if possible. You have the right to close the door and not talk to me. Do you have a few minutes to talk to me and I can put this to bed? And then they'll say yes or no. And he was like, oh, he's like, what if they say no? I'm like, who cares? Like, then we'll just go investigate him or not. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people that don't know how to do normal talking. And that attitude of like, people should just tell me because I show them my badge and my credentials. Like, people hate FBI credentials right now. It's way harder to do that job than it was. And it's the FBI's own fault for what they did on January 6th and so on. I think that what happened in Butler also said kind of a thing. My buddy and I have been calling this thing the myth of competency, right? Everybody assumes that because you're under Secret Service protection that you're invincible. And Butler proved that's not true, that they might have some half-ass agents from DHS and some fat chicks that are in there and they don't belong. And suddenly you realize that your protective detail was like really phoning it in. And you were basically going on reputation alone and not on real capabilities. So all that plays into what. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, even going back to your role playing thing, because this is a real problem in law enforcement in general. And this is, look, I love law enforcement, folks. We need good law enforcement people out there, but there is a problem when, to me, and I'll go down these like audit, you know, these audit videos on YouTube or wherever else where, you know, where we have law enforcement that completely forget to put first the Constitution. And so what you have is you have these people just like you're talking about that show up like, hey guys, I'm an FBI agent. And what the correct response that they expect is, first of all, that you submissive P yourself. And then you just answer any question. But when they don't get that expected response, now they have an emotional response because they feel like they're an authority over you.
Yeah. And you disrespected them by not giving them what they wanted.
And so now we're going to, and then the other issue is they don't have any tools to bridge that gap. They don't have the gift of gab, or they don't have any way to have a compelling conversation. So they go to the next thing that they have in their tool bag, and that is hands-on. I'm put you under arrest, and we're going down there. And then if you resist this clearly illegal arrest and detainment, now we're just going to, it can escalate and escalate and escalate. And
yeah,
that's
and you get a
problem.
guy, then you get a guy who runs an airport, and you could have gone and seen him at work, and you end up shooting him, in his underwear at 6 a.m. in Arkansas. So
great example.
So I don't like any of that. When I used to go talk to people, I would always tell them, it's like, look, you don't have to talk to me. It'd be fine if you don't want to, but I'd love it if we can. And by the way, it would probably help me out and you out. And, you can stop talking at any time. And people go, oh, well, what do you want to talk about? And then after about 5 minutes, almost always, and I did this probably 20, 30 times, when I was in New Mexico alone, they'd go, you're not what I expected when I met an FBI agent. I go, yeah, I know, feds are a bunch of effing nerds. And then everybody laughs, except my partner, who's looking at his shoes because he's an effing nerd and he's being a nerd. He's being weird. And so that's what they tried to teach people at the academy, but they don't hire for that skill set of just being a regular dude who shakes hands, looks you in the eye, is not trying to scam anybody. When they say, what do? You say, I work for the FBI. They don't say some weird squirrely stuff. And if I can tell you why I'm there, I'm going to do it. And so this all plays into the credibility of why people are looking at what happens in Utah and they go, I don't think so, man. I think there's a problem. Let me say from the outset, we got way too much information in the public compared to any homicide case that you guys have seen. I want you to evaluate it critically in your own mind. Think about how many times you saw the murder weapon before a trial, how many times you heard the specifics of an egress route for an assassin who decided to run away. I mean, we don't get a lot of those anyway, but it's just not common that they laid out the timeline and exactly what happened until it's being prosecuted because you don't want to taint the jury pool. Right. And by the way, the FBI director getting involved and the FBI deputy director, who are both very public figures, who were friends with Charlie Kirk by their own volition. I'm just going to take them at their word. I don't know how close they were, but they said they were. Every single honest law enforcement person will tell you that it's not even the fact that you're connected to the victim. It's the presumption that it makes a bad look, that you have a conflict of interest, means you have to recuse yourself. They should have never been involved in this case in any meaningful way out loud. And the fact that they were chasing social media and clout, look, full disclosure, I got about 6 friends that work in the Salt Lake field office that have involved themselves in this investigation that did, interviews. Some of them probably involved in evidence collection. I've been very cautious about asking them anything because I don't want to jam any of them up. But we did have a couple of questions about the way Patel handled it. And he was like freaking out about the fact they didn't give him surveillance footage that they found 4 hours earlier in real time so he could tweet the damn thing out. Everything about that is wrong. So all that stuff is bad. But the way that the FBI, generally speaking, the fact that they got an air asset out there to be able to fly stuff back to the lab and do quick and rapid DNA analysis, that's good. They have really, really good ballistics people. My buddy was a Force Recon Marine, and he was an officer that was a stud out of the Naval Academy, and just like, kind of would have been like one of your cousins. He's like the uglier cousin to you. He's got like big red beard and everything. He's just a brick shithouse of a human being. And he's a stud. And he was on the evidence team for years. Like, there were good people that do that work. Not all of them. And he also ran around during COVID telling everybody that if they wore masks, he thought they were fluffy farm animals because he was told he couldn't call them sheep anymore. So like,
he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Exactly. Like, they're good people that did this work. And so to say like the management of this case was bad from a PR status, and it gave people way too much information, and at the same time, not enough for them to solve the case in their bedroom. Yeah. And I think that's what people need to come to grips with. And I've got the complaint up here too. So,
well, I think part of the problem, is that people don't realize that the information that was released, all the surveillance footage, all the stuff that was released, was strictly to identify this person who at the time we didn't know. It wasn't to prove to anybody else and give us this evidence where we could be like, okay, all right, we approve of FBI. Like, you guys got the right guy. It wasn't that at all. It was literally, it was enough information to do exactly what it did. And that was, his parents saw it, people that he knew, like, oh God, that's Tyler. And so then we have his parents and apparently his father and his grandfather texting back and forth, asking him if he did it. And the next thing you know, there are the ones that are facilitating him being turned in the next day. So you can, I guess, on that part, if you want to criticize one way or the other, you're doing it out of the idea that
the manhunt part of it was not a problem. Yeah. The pictures of the manhunt, I'm questioning why they released a picture of the rifle, and I don't know what the value of that was. Like maybe they thought it was like recognizable, but it wasn't particularly recognizable.
It was
like
the ATF that released that. That was a leaked photo that I think was released, if I remember correctly, by Steven Crowder.
That was a Crowder one. Okay.
Yeah.
And why that was is beyond me. And maybe it was because of the ideology that was apparently written on the so look, the other thing that's going on, people have to understand there's a little war going on inside of federal law enforcement. There's a concern that your brick agents, your case agents that are actually working the job, who tend to be, like, I would say, more libertarian and non-political in general. They just kind of want live and let live. And there's some a-holes obviously too, but they're looking at supervisors that are making decisions about not telling the public stuff. Like when they're hiding, let's say, the trans shooters manifesto from Tennessee.
Yeah.
They're worried about this stuff because there are people that are out there that are going like, wait a minute, are we going to cover up a Hunter Biden laptop and we're not going to tell people about it? Are we not going to do an honest investigation? Are we going to do this thing where it's never going to come out when we're seeing the stuff like day one, minute one, and it's really obvious that there's an ideology that's predicated and that's a real threat to people? So you're seeing this backlash of leaked information, and they're finding ways to do it. I was the first person, I think, that reported about the shooter at the Catholic school up in Minneapolis. And I didn't want to be. I just have law enforcement sources that reached out to me. And I was able to cover them pretty well. And I got to Alex Jones with it. And so like Alex was like, we're breaking exclusive. You know, he's all excited about it. I don't want to break stories, but I do want to make sure that law enforcement understands there is an outlet for some of this stuff, but it doesn't necessarily make it better. So the rifle question, like, again, it was more than necessary for the manhunt, but it's less than necessary for you to solve the case at home. But we can tell that there is information that is not being released, which is why when people go like, aha, they're these people that have decided whatever it is that they think is real, because they thought of it, they're the ones that are going to have the biggest problem, because they're telling us right here in this information that was released, they don't show you all the footage. Like from what I read here, they probably have footage of him actually taking the shot.
Yeah.
And I think you and I agree on that.
Yeah, no, I believe they do.
So let's
pull up that document. Let's go through it and make sure everybody over in there, we're all working on the same base of information. Yep. And that's what we want to do, folks. We want to make sure that we're giving you the most solid information, the facts. And from there, it's easier to jump to, if you're going to jump to conclusions, at least you have a solid footing to do so. I think that's the best move.
So a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, this was charged via information. There's two ways that you get a federal arrest usually, or there's two ways that a state arrest can happen. And one of them is through an indictment. Obviously, you can do it based on probable cause, but then you usually have to go out there and get some sort of either a complaint, a criminal complaint, or you do an indictment. You go in front of a grand jury. It's interesting on this one, and it's going to be relevant because the way this is playing out is pretty wild. And for anybody who thinks they've already solved this, like his attorneys haven't even reviewed all the evidence yet. Yeah. And they want another month before they do a status check. On October the 30th, there's going to be another hearing to decide when they're going to do the preliminary hearing to actually evaluate whether there's probable cause to charge this man with murder or not. He's got 7 charges, and I'm going to skip the charges because they're not super important. They actually come up during the charging statement. But the probable cause statement was written by a guy named Brian Davis. He's from the Utah Bureau of Investigations. So he is a state cop. He's not an FBI agent who's writing this. And they have charged this. And then sometime in the future, there's going to be an adversarial process during a preliminary hearing where the defense is going to be able to argue against there being probable cause, and the prosecutors are going to argue for probable cause, which just means that it's more likely than not. And they're going to show us in the first hearing, essentially some evidence that says that this stuff is based in fact. And if you make a statement in this probable cause piece, you're swearing that there is in fact a factual basis for it. So Jeffrey Gray is the prosecutor for Utah County. He's the one who is swearing this thing out. The fact statement, the affidavit, was generated. It's down on page 3, so you can go down a little ways. But those are your counts. They're basically murder in front of a child, aggravated by hate, and some obstruction and some witness tampering. That's the short version of that stuff.
Yep.
All right. Probable cause stuff. We may have to take turns reading through it. Scroll a little further. Those are the counts still. All right. We skipped it. Go up a little bit, up a little bit, up a little bit. Boop, right there. Probable cause. So Brian Davis, there you go. So there's your investigator from Utah State Bureau of Investigation. And he says, I have probable cause to believe the following. This is a standard format for any sort of these things, these affidavits. September 10th, 2025, approximately 12:23, Charlie Kirk was shot and killed while speaking to a large crowd. This is where the facts get in. So they say that he was shot and killed. That's counts 1 and 2. That's your aggravated discharge of a weapon and your aggravated homicide. Then you've got the police found a suspected murder weapon, which was a bolt action 30-06 nearby. So there you have your caliber of your weapon that was released in there, and it's the specificity. Then there's the 33-hour manhunt. The police conducted a manhunt for the shooter until the evening of September the 11th, 2025. Tyler James Robinson surrendered to police in Washington County Sheriff's Office. Then they give you the DNA piece. Consistent with his DNA, it was found on the rifle's trigger, so touch DNA. That's probably the FBI getting involved and doing a quick, rapid DNA sequence there. After shooting Mr. Kirk, I feel like they should say allegedly on there, but they're making a statement that they believe there's probable cause to believe this. Robinson hid the gun, so that's count 3. That's one of your obstructions. It impedes the ability for them to prosecute. Changed clothing where he filed the rifle. That's another obstruction. And then told his lover/roommate to delete incriminating text messages, count 5. That was witness tampering, I believe, or maybe another obstruction. And then the count 6 was don't talk to the police. That's witness tampering. And then the last one was doing a crime of violence in front of children. So it just states that there are children present. So those are the facts real quickly laid out. And then we get into the actual shooting. And this is where I think you actually see that there's clearly evidence that we're not seeing in the public. And people should be comfortable with that because you're not going to get it. Tells you what turning point is, tells you that he was talking. It tells you that it was advanced. So this would make it, premeditated. The event was advanced. I'm just skipping down by paragraphs because some of these aren't really part of it. 15 minutes in, he's answering a question about mass shootings by transgender individuals when a gunshot is ringing out. That's going to go towards like the ideology or of the shooter. And I think that's why they put it in there so they can make the claim that it's based on like politics and hate. That's my guess. I don't know if it's specifically. Bullet struck.
They actually specifically state that later on.
So they say the bullet struck Mr. Kirk in the neck. And this is written very quickly. This is written just very shortly thereafter. So this is subject to change with a medical examiner, but that's what they say. Slumped to the ground almost immediately. The bullet's trajectory passed close to several others. So it doesn't tell us what happened in his body. It just says that the path would have had to cross near other individuals. And then it says they were children who could see the stage. Again, that goes to the count 7. And then you get this part, which I think is the biggest piece. This is like for people that are doing the investigation on their own and think that this is how I know you don't have everything. At the moment of the shot, a UVU police officer was watching the crowd from an elevated vantage point. As soon as he heard the shot, he began to scan the area for threats. Believing that the shot came from a rifle because of the sound, anybody who's ever heard it, the idea that you would hear everything out of an iPhone microphone is crazy. They have a very, very small diaphragm. They do not pick up the bass of a large caliber rifle or a 30 caliber rifle. He believed it came from a potential sniper position. He noted that the roof area approximately 160 yards away from Kirk was a potential shooting position, and he rushed there to look for evidence. And this is where I think it gets really fun or interesting for people that haven't read this stuff. The suspected shooting position is adjacent to an open, publicly accessible walkway. How many people were asking how he got on the roof early on for weeks, right? To access the suspected location, a person must climb over a railing and then drop to the roof only slightly below. In other words, an easy access, and the officer did that thing. He climbed over the railing and dropped down onto the roof, so that's something anybody could have done. Then he walked to the suspected shooting position, and he confirmed a clear shooting corridor between the position and Mr. Kirk's seat. This is where it gets real simple. We've seen this picture. He noticed gravel markings in the rooftop, consistent with a sniper having lain there. Impressions in the gravel, potentially left by elbows, knees, and feet, which is all stuff you'd expect as somebody proned out. So you're telling us that. Then you go, okay, fine. Well, that's the narrative. We've heard that. We've seen the picture. Police reviewed the surveillance footage from the camera covering the roof and discovered that it recorded an individual dressed in dark clothing crossing the railing from the public walkway, the same way they said the cop did, and dropping onto the rooftop at approximately 12:15. They have video footage of this guy dropping onto the roof, and you haven't seen it, and I haven't seen it because it's not been released. Although the individual moved out of the camera's view for a short time, there's a possibility, by the way, he had stashed the weapon up there already, and maybe he recovered it at that point. We don't know, but I'm just saying, like, there's some things that are out of view. The camera again captured the individual running across the roof and then low crawling into the area where the UVU officer recognized the suspected shooter had dropped into the prone shooting position shortly thereafter, which matches the known time of the shot. The individual arose and ran across the roof to the east. So we know that he ran across the area. There may be video of him actually taking the shot. There's not going to be sound with it, but apparently they know that he popped up and ran. I think that's really damning. Like, that's, if they have that and they can track who that person is. And by the way, tracking people on surveillance footage is not that hard to do. And they probably have telephonic tracking as well. They haven't released it, but the odds are is that the FBI's CAST and the CART team have dumped the phone for locations, and the CAST team has been able to like triangulate where he was at. They wouldn't publish it, but they could. And they probably will show it at trial. This led to this discovery and intensive review. That, by the way, takes a little bit of time to dump through. So getting tower dumps, that's why they maybe couldn't do it right away with the, during the manhunt.
Right.
In any case, they say then they traced him back. So they found this guy and they worked backwards, which is what you would do. You'd say, okay, well, here's where he was. Here's what he did. We know he's the bad guy. So now how did he get here? 11:51, he entered the campus from the north. He's seen wearing the black t-shirt. We've all seen the picture, American flag in the center, black baseball cap, large sunglasses. Throughout the surveillance, he kept his head down and he barely raises his head enough to get a clear image of his face. I think that's important because it goes to people that are trying to avoid surveillance. You don't have to be specially trained. If you watched any TV show, you would know that. But it does show that you're using tradecraft, right? So that goes to like premeditation and other things. He proceeds across the campus. He says he's seen with an unusual gait, and the suspect walks with a very little bending in his right leg, consistent with a rifle being hidden in his pants. So you see, that's where the police make this argument. They think that he had a rifle or something hidden down his pants. You and I were talking about it privately. There's some other things that could be going on there.
Sure.
This unusual gait leaves the subject as he's crossing into the open railing. So they basically say that he at some point draws the weapon. He's running without having that problem. So he probably either stepped out of the camera's view and drew the weapon out of his pants, or he recovered a weapon there and he was walking with a fake limp. Who knows? Camera later captures him as he runs across the roof. We've seen this video. Most people probably have. Suspected shooting position. He crosses from left to right on there. And then he immediately after the shot was fired, the camera captures the subject running in the open with a shape that is consistent with a rifle. And I watched it a bunch and I think it's consistent with a rifle. Do you have a sense on that from watching it?
Yeah, I do. I'll tell you, I've said it multiple times. At first, when I first looked at it, just initially, it's hard to see what looks like a rifle. That being said, then I watched Gray Hughes break down. Gray Hughes investigates, and he does a really good job of showing some different things in that video footage. And one of the things is the fact that, number one, it's just a shitty camera footage, right? And what happens is you can see when he puts his arms down that because of the highlights of that, like his arms almost disappear. And it's just because we have a very low quality camera that has very low, dynamic range. So on that white background and all of this stuff, something thin like a barrel, and the fact that we're zoomed way in, it just doesn't show up. But then he actually breaks it down and he shows different portions where he screen grabs, where you can see like the entire towel is being suspended by what looks like a barrel. So, the information is there if you take the time to really look, and it is very compelling, because I was the same way. I was like, there's no way that guy got off the roof with a gun. And then I looked at it more closely, and I think there's a good case to be made. It's pretty obvious, actually. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
I agree with that. I did a whole thread on it for people that want to see it. There's people that have gone through and tagged on the thread their own screenshots, kind of showing you where to see in the crappy, grainy, low contrast video. It's like watching a video of Bigfoot from the 80s. It's not ideal. Obviously, that's the case. But the question is, did they track somebody who they believe had a rifle? And then did they find a rifle there? If we start from the position that everything they say is a lie and all these people are lying, you have to believe that there are cops that are working at a university that have never thought they would ever experience a homicide investigation, that have decided to go out in bad faith and allow this to go forward. That you have FBI agents who basically are a bunch of really nice Mormon dudes that wanted to move out to Utah because that's where they wanted to work to get away from other crappy offices. And they just want to be left alone to do like decent work and find drug dealers and stuff. And those guys are all in on it. Like, you have to believe that everybody is in on it at every level, and nobody came out and goes, hey, this is crap. And part of it, like, honestly, I'll inject myself in there in a way that's kind of unusual. I have already been an outlet for people to reach out. There are people that are involved in this investigation that if something was fully shenanigans like that, they would go, hey, dude, they're setting something up that's fake. Because my buddies would lose this job. Like, half my friends don't even want to work there anymore. They think it's dumb. They think the bureau sucks. They don't like that they're doing it. They're looking for other opportunities to do something else. And, some of my buddies have enough money put away from being smart with their own, with their decent government salary, that if they walked away from this job or they've got spouses that make good money, they don't have to do this. So I don't believe that there's enough to convince me that everything in this document is a complete lie, and it's a bald-faced lie to try to convince us something, and that actually the Jews were shooting from a trapdoor. Like, none of that stuff lines up with me, and none of this fact pattern is really illogical when you get down to it. It's like, what's more likely? Somebody went out and took a shot. And so anyway, we can keep reading about this stuff, but that's where the big pieces are. They eventually say that he drops off the roof. We saw him land really awkwardly, I think, as well. Yeah. And that's commensurate with not having both your hands in your balance and not knowing how to drop off a roof, which, you know how to do. And I'm okay at doing it. I'd try to do a PLF there, but you'd probably be hard to PLF if you got a rifle in one hand and it strikes the ground. And you don't want to get stabbed in the throat with it. So anyway, that's the deal. So he drops off. Then he goes and runs across and he gets up to the road and it goes into a wooded area. And it says the camera captures him leaving there with this shape consistent to a rifle. It looks like the rifle hits the ground in a controlled fall. I'd say that was narrowly controlled because that was kind of a wild little drop. Not the way that I would want to egress from a building. I would tell you that. And then he picks up the item and runs towards the northeast end of campus. And then it just says they tracked him further. They believe that he went off campus and entered a wooded area. And that's where they found the bolt action rifle wrapped in a towel, not in a box, as we saw, right? The box was an evidence box for people who don't know that. That's how you track. And that's how you put evidence that are firearms. You zip tie them down in a box that is cardboard to preserve DNA evidence. Usually you render them safe first, and then you send them off for evaluation. And so that's what that box was. That was probably the fourth or fifth picture that was taken of that box. Usually you do what's called an establishing shot where you show where it is like in the world. And then you get a closer thing. So you see like where it was in either a room or a bush or a tree or whatever. And then you get closer and you show it actually where it is. And then you collect it and you put it on a good surface where you can, visibly make out the details. And that was a pretty low res image. So I'm guessing someone snapped that with a cell phone.
Yeah,
they didn't do that with like a professional camera, like for evidence.
No, that's exactly what it looks like. And obviously the other thing that is interesting about that picture, I don't think abnormal, but it's at night, right? So they've been processing that scene, and we don't even know if that picture was taken at the scene or if it was later on at wherever they were taking that evidence. But you were talking about, number one, you were talking about how you have different sources that send you information, right? Mm-hmm. As well as like guys like Steven Crowder. So I think that that came from Steven Crowder. The fact is that you have people in your audience. I have people in my audience, and they want to get their work out there for one reason or another. I don't even know what the motive is, but I get sent a lot of stuff that, like, if I was in that job, I probably wouldn't send that, but people do all the time. Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we saw with that picture being released by the ATF.
I don't think that was seeded to Steven Crowder knowing that he was going to do something salacious with it. And again, it's actually not great for the case when you go to do prosecution. So it's going to be something they're going to have to answer for, because it clearly does taint a jury pool a little bit, the way that it was put out and the fact that they had to put all this stuff. So they put it all in the probable cause statement, and eventually it all comes out, so this information, you can keep some things in the public. Anyway, it says that it was a bolt action rifle. It was wrapped in the towel. The rifle had 1 spent round and 3 unspent rounds, consistent with firing a bolt and not working the action and leaving it in there. And then they found unique things on this. So anyway, it goes on and describes what's on those shell casings, which we've seen. But there's one about notices bulge and OWO and what's that, and hey fascist. And apparently this all has to do with the video game. And the Bella Ciao is kind of an anti-fascist song that I just heard Greta Thunberg and her friends singing on a boat when they were getting captured by Israel. And the last one said, if you read this, you're gay, which is legitimately a meme that people make about the FBI, which is borderline hilarious if it wasn't in like some of the worst scenario where you just killed a dad. And then so they go on and they talk about it. And they sent this off for forensic processing. DNA was found on the trigger and other parts of the rifle, fired casing, and the other ones that were unfired in the towel, and they sent it all off. So like that all makes sense. Like none of that stuff is crazy. None of that stuff is difficult to process mentally. None of that stuff has to do with trapdoors or anything else. And again, it's a straight line. Like when you start doing the odds that this is my argument against what happened in Butler. People are like, there was obviously a second shooter. I'm like, so 2 people failed at the shooting? Like, come on. The reason why it was so crazy what happened to Kennedy and why people get behind, first of all, it happened in low resolution television. It happened at a time when we didn't have instantaneous news and nobody had a camera except people who were professionals. And it was successful. And they killed an American president during a really critical time. And so, and then the guy who was the shooter was killed. And then that guy died of cancer. So like it was really neatly tied up. Like you can't tie up a story like that without looking like the Kennedy assassination at this point. I don't think that that's possible anymore. That's why professionals don't do it that way. Not anymore. That's, take it for what it's worth. Anyway, then they go on to talk about how the photo went out and the mom recognized it. It says they ended up talking to the son, said he was homesick, and then the whole story that we heard about him eventually turning himself in. I don't think any of that stuff actually has as much to do with the probable cause statement that people are trying to investigate, because the people that are quote unquote doing the internet investigation are all focused in on the actual shooting and the hand signals and the one of Charlie's best friends, by all accounts, being in on it, and other people being in on it. The security team was in on it, destroying evidence and all this other kind of wild stuff. And I'm happy to chat about all that, but I don't think they know what they saw. And unless you have security cam footage of that crime scene for the multiple days that it was held, and you have access to the log of all the people that were on there and not on there, and you can find out, like, aha, they let these people in and they weren't on the log and they didn't,
Right.
and here they are on camera doing this crazy thing. Like, seeing people after the fact doing things, seeing people act crazy after someone gets shot is pretty expected, because nobody expects to get shot in a public gathering at a college campus. People running around and grabbing a body. Like, I watched the way they carried him off. I don't know if you saw the video of him being carried on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, why was there not an ambulance on standby? Like, my questions are all about what the hell happened there, and how is that security posture so weak? I've never heard of a big event like that doesn't have an ambulance on standby. It's very common. Having done that job, I used to be an ambulance driver. I was a paramedic for a couple of years, so it's really strange to see the way that was handled. The fact that they just grabbed him and ran with it, they knew it was bad, and they threw him in the back of an SUV instead of like waiting for transport. Like, he probably was gone right there. And I've heard people say, well, he had a heartbeat when he got to the hospital. Like, man, bullets do wild stuff when they hit bodies. If you've never worked on bodies, like I said, I was a medic. I know what this is about. I'm not like an expert by the highest level, but I've had people that were straight up dead as a doornail in my hands that had either a pulse or they had electrical activity in their heart. And we worked them for 40, 50 minutes. And then then you clamshell them and you open up their chest cavity, and you realize they got like 3 liters of coagulated blood filling up their mediastinal, and they were completely dead. They've been dead for a long time, but the heart still had activity because it was still getting perfusion.
And let's be real. The other thing too is they were doing CPR on him the entire way to the hospital, and chances are they hooked him up on some sort of life support. So they're getting a mechanical pulse, but that doesn't mean that he's alive or there's any brain activity whatsoever. So I think there needs to be some distinguishment from that, right? I mean, there's a big difference between being alive and having a pulse.
And having a pulse, yeah, exactly. If there was CNS interaction, if they hit spinal column with that bullet, which is it was neck, so who knows, but it was in the area where that could have been impacted 100%. Or if you just interrupted any of the blood flow up to the brain, like, there's some serious vessels on that side there. So assuming he actually did get hit in the side and not in the chest, which is, I think he got hit in the chest from what I saw. But again, we haven't seen a coroner's report. We haven't seen an autopsy or a postmortem. And we're not going to, because that's going to be for the trial. It's not for us. We're not part of the family. We're not investigating this. We have no authority to go and demand these things, even though the public really wants it. And this morning I made a point on my podcast, which I think was, it's hard for people to deal with, but we're in an instantaneous gratification moment where if you want to go watch the collected history of every episode of MASH right now, tonight, you could do that. Like, Gary, you could go buy them and have them beamed to your computer or your big screen, and you could sit and watch every episode of a TV show from the 70s without leaving your house.
Right. And
so people want everything right now. They want all the information, and they want it wrapped up in an hour like they do in the police procedurals, because they're ready to solve this case, And that's not how it works in the real world, nor does it work in any other homicide investigation that anyone's ever heard of.
Yeah, and I do want to read the rest of this investigation, because I think it's relevant and important for people to know if they haven't heard it already. And that is Robinson's mother stated the following to police on September 11th, 2025, the day after the shooting. Robinson's mother saw the photo of the shooter in the news and thought the shooter looked like her son. Robinson's mother called her son and asked him where he was. He said he was at home sick, and that he had also been homesick on September 10th. Robinson's mother expressed concern to her husband that the suspected shooter looked like Robinson. Robinson's father agreed. Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and started to lean more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. She stated that Robinson began to date his roommate, a biological male who was transitioning genders. This resulted in several discussions with family members, but especially between Robinson and his father, who have very different political views. In one conversation before the shooting, Robinson mentioned that Charlie Kirk would be holding an event at UVU, which Robinson said was a stupid venue for the event. Robinson accused Kirk of spreading hate. So there's more to it. If you guys want to go watch this is publicly available. You guys go read the rest of this. It's publicly available. You guys go check that out.
Touch one more thing. If you scroll down to the text messages, because I know people key in on weird things. I read these things that people key in on, and I go, well, that's just because you've never read an information, which is what this is. This is a charging document that is, it's not screen captures. They're like, where's the timestamps?
Yeah.
So I've done
transcripts.
yeah, it's a transcript. I've done complaints like this where I've typed up what somebody said on a phone call. And so you type it up verbatim as it is, and it's a transcript, and then the judge reads it, and then they go, okay, well, that's what it is. They're not going to timestamp this. They're trying to get the substance of this information across. They're not presenting evidence in its entirety. They're saying this is what, is the fact pattern that gives us probable cause to believe that he was the one who did it. And this goes to mindset, and it goes to admission, and so on. But it's not like, obviously the writer, this guy, I think his name is Brian Davis, is the one who wrote this. Like, he typed this up. This is not something that like they screen captured or cut and pasted from a grab or a computer exploit. This is a transcript. That's what it's supposed to be. So it looks exactly like what you'd expect it to. But again, if you don't know anything about homicide investigation, or you don't know anything about police investigations anyway, then maybe that's really weird. And there's a possibility people are like, oh, you know how he misquotes his own meme, right? Because there was a claim about that. I'm guessing that was probably a typo by the officer who typed this up. And that happens. You're not going to be perfect, especially under the amount of stress that was going on building this. So there are very easy explanations that, not everything is just a ninja waiting to jump out of the ceiling and play a trick on you. Sometimes it's just real human stuff, which is like, dudes type stuff up and they're cops. They don't, if you screw up a tweet, I guarantee you that in 8 pages of typing up something that is really pretty aggressive, and that guy did a pretty non-emotional write-up, didn't interject his own feelings about stuff. I don't know what his politics are from what I read, and that's what you're supposed to do. So he just wrote a factual statement in the affidavit. Good on him. And maybe you got a typo there about the bulge thing.
Right.
Which is super important to people, I'm sure.
Well, let's talk about a little bit too. Let's talk about your thoughts on the crime scene. I know there's been a lot of discussion of, hey, they started pulling up the grass. Look, and I'll be the first to say, look, it's weird that we start seeing this area paved over. I have just recently heard, and I don't know if it's true, but I have heard them talking about turning that into a memorial area for Charlie. But give your thoughts on that whole portion of this case. The crime scene being processed, the amount of time it took, and then what happens afterwards.
Sure. So the crime scene is a crime scene until you release it. And it could be a crime scene for 72 hours if you're doing a significant exploit of the area and you need to gather all kinds of evidence and you need to, get information out of it. It also could be a crime scene for like an hour. I've gone to death investigations where we went into the house. They held it as a crime scene until I got there because I was the lead agent on the call. I get called out on somebody who hung themselves, for example. I go into the scene. I go walk in. Okay, got it. I take some pictures. I do my establishing shots. I see where the body is. I'm like, all right, we got to put a body in a bag and we got to send it off to the medical examiner and do, cause of death, which looks pretty obvious to me. So we do that and then we're done. So like an hour later, I've taken all the pictures I can. It doesn't look like there's any evidence of foul play. Somebody who kills himself inside of a locked room with, closed doors and there's no broken windows and there's just a lot of flies and everybody's sad. Now it's your house. It's not my problem anymore. So I'm just going to leave. I'm going to leave when the coroner does. They take the body and I go too. Homicide is going to be a little bit different, especially something like this where you had a lot of different evidence and there wasn't an obvious suspect that was in custody already. So they're going to hold it for a while. They're going to get all the angles. They're going to make sure they scrubbed everything down they needed to. But at some point, they got to let it go. It's a college campus where kids are going to school every day. And I can easily imagine that if you're a college kid and you're going to walk by the concrete where there's blood stains, at some point, that's going to get dealt with. And I imagine it gets dealt with sooner than later. I don't know a ton about people in Utah, but my experience with people from Utah is that they're very conscientious. They're very polite people. And if you're going to a school that is full of a lot of folks that are probably not feeling really great about something horrific happening, a national tragedy happening in front of their eyes, ripping up the grass or paving it over or doing something like that, like that's not nefarious. Especially, again, there's a crime scene log. Somebody has a clipboard and says every single person that's in or out of it. If they didn't keep that, it is devastating to when the defense goes out and says, why did you have all these unauthorized people in here? So they can discredit all the evidence collected. And we're talking about people that were pros. Like they flew in the FBI's evidence response team, as far as I understand. They flew in people that deal with this kind of stuff, that you deal with huge, horrific events that are really unwieldy and in public spaces. So they'll hold it for as long as they need to. They'll put up the tents they need to put up to be able to gather things so it doesn't degrade, whatever. And then when they're done, they're done. And it's no longer a crime scene. And so people say the same thing. It's like, what do you think happens after the police go home? After the evidence response has done their job? It becomes a place that then it becomes a place on somebody's tour guide map.
Yeah.
And they go, on this spot, on this day, this thing happened. It's very normal. But if you don't know that, I guess that could be incriminating or look wild. It does feel insensitive. I'm sure people feel that too. I think they're trying to rationalize something that, if you're looking for boogeymen in this, you know how many people you'd have to have in on this conspiracy to make some of these wild conjectures be real? They're so wild. There's so many people that would have had to bought off on something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the big thing that it just doesn't make sense. It's not what any rational person that's trying to actually get away with a conspiracy. If you're, have multiple shooters and now you're creating multiple trajectories that are clearly going to be found out, like I don't even know. Where do you go with the rationale of that? Why would any professional do that?
Yeah, that's the other thing. And also, so people understand, this is going to be a very public trial. The judge just did this, and most people probably haven't gone and watched the hearing, but it's pinned to my timeline over on X if they want to see it. You can scroll down and find the YouTube link, so it goes away. It's some local channel, and it's 10 minutes long. It's super easy to watch. You can watch it in 2X. You won't miss anything. And so in 5 minutes, you can watch the entirety of the last court hearing where the judge gets on. He said he was sworn in 58 days ago, so I don't think he's in on it, whatever that is. Whatever it is, I don't think he's in on it. He's a new judge. He's probably way out of his depth. This is the most high-profile thing he'll ever see in his entire career out there in a sleepy little town. And he goes out and he says, we're going to do this publicly, and we're all going to swear to do our best. And I want the prosecution to present the most compelling case they have, and the defense, I want you to give him a lawful and justifiable and a solid defense, and you guys meet or exceed the requirements for a defense team that we have, and we have minimums, and I'm going to do my best, and we're going to let the media in, and we're going to do a trial, and we're going to have it fair, and we're going to protect the rights of this individual who's presumed innocent until he's proven guilty. And so, like, it's all there, and it's all going to come out. Like, they'll show you all the evidence. I guarantee you there'll be an awful lot of cameras that will show the exhibits and the evidence and the ballistics and all the questions that people have. But not today. You're not going to get it tonight. You're not going to get it today. We can't solve this murder without having access to it. And they're not going to give it to you. You just don't have it. Yeah. There were hundreds of interviews. They're talking about the number of witnesses being in the hundreds because they're actually interviewing every single person that had a vantage to it and might have any information. I know for a fact, like I said, I got a half dozen buddies in that field office that they were out hitting, canvassing, what they call like banging on doors and asking questions and sitting down and getting people's statement of what they saw. And if they had any photographic evidence they could share and so on. They did a huge push. And per Kash Patel, who shouldn't have been there in the first place, but he said the first FBI agent was there in 16 minutes. That's how small the town is. That's how quick the word went out. And, they had somebody there like really close by. So they started this response very quickly. And again, how would you get that many people in on it? Like, you can't do a conspiracy with that many people. It's just.
Well, and I thought it was interesting. The defense is asking for more time because discovery is voluminous.
That's exactly
that was one of the key components to that. So folks, there is a ton of evidence out there. Just like Kyle said, we're just not seeing that. Any other really key points you can think of before we start hitting questions?
Yeah, the last little thing is that all the videos that you've seen have mostly been compressed. I think this has been covered ad nauseum by various people. Yeah. I think my buddy Ryan Matta did an okay job of talking about how you're getting compressed videos that are uploaded to the internet. They're not the raw, and you're certainly not getting the raw version and the enhanced version that they get out of any security cameras. So again, we know for a fact that they didn't release all the video. There's video that is referenced in the complaint, in that information that they use as a charging document. Oh, and the last little piece is, that charging document is a probable cause statement that has not yet been evaluated by a grand jury. It will be evaluated by the judge, by the prosecutor, and the defense being able to be on adversarial sides in a preliminary hearing. And as you said, they don't even want to set that date yet because there's so much information to comb through that the defense is not ready to even say when it is. And they're not going to have an update on when that date's going to be for another 30 days. And that's when they're going to assess when they're going to put this preliminary hearing. So this is like way, way off in the future. I mean, I'd be shocked if we find out. They might not even have the preliminary hearing this year. I wouldn't be shocked, but like Thanksgiving or Christmas, something like that, like it's going to take them a long time to go through all this stuff. It's a ton of evidence, it sounds like.
When do you think we'll see the actual trial?
Oh, bro. I mean, we're still dealing with those kids that were murdered in Idaho, which was another kind of sleepy college town situation. And that was, also kind of a national interest for a few seconds. They're still going through that case. And that was in 2022 or 2023? Yeah. It'll be probably a couple years unless they just have a really fast docket. But the fact is that the defense is in no hurry to move this thing forward, it sounds like, because they want to do the right job. And that means time. And justice doesn't work quickly in this country. It's an absolute shame. It's horrible for the families. They're going to be dragged through this for the next couple of years. Like anybody who knows, cases take forever. I got a federal case against the FBI right now, and we're going on 3 years in it. It's just our system is not great in that way, and it leaves a lot to be desired. And it certainly leaves a lot to be desired if your interest is, I want this wrapped up like a police procedural TV show, so I can put this one to bed and move on to the next exciting story.
Well, Ryan Ruth was just finally. I mean, we just saw his.
Yeah,
trial.
and that was actually relatively quick.
Yeah,
that's because he represented himself. Simple. Well, he represented himself because he's so. If you have a bonehead who does something really boneheaded, and then they insist on being their own attorney, and they don't have a professional, then you're going to get right through the end. And then, by the way, what? He was declared guilty and he stabbed himself in the neck. That went down in, was it October?
He didn't even do that correctly.
No, he didn't. Was it October that he was posted up at the Trump thing, or was it maybe just?
Yeah,
I know it was in mid to late 2024. It's almost
a full year.
Yeah, that's it.
It's moving on pretty close to a year.
And that's fast. That's really fast. There you go.
All right, let's hit some questions, folks. So again, we'll prioritize these super chats, and then we'll try to hit as many other ones as we possibly can until Kyle says I'm getting the hell out of here. All right, Richard says, I'd really like to hear from Andrew Colvelt and see why he interrupted that interview. The kid giving his account was clearly very bothered by that. Andrew wasn't the one that interrupted that. You're talking about the kids at the back of the right after the event took place. Andrew Colvelt wasn't there. That was a bunch of other TPUSA kids. I don't even think Andrew Colvelt was at that event, to be honest with you. Thanks, Gary. Please ask Kyle to elaborate on his X post today. I thought it was great. What post did you do? You did like 40 today, right? So.
Yeah, I probably did. No, I did a breakdown of this. And the question is basically, and a lot of people got upset about it, but the question is, if you have a lot of strong feelings about what you think happened, have you read this statement? And what are your problems with this statement? Because that's where your jump off point should start. If you think there's something illogical, what have you seen specifically? And if it's the absence of evidence, essentially that's not evidence that something actually happened. One thing that we didn't cover is the disassembly story on the rifle, which I've heard a ton of people reference.
Let's talk about that.
I keep asking people, like, where did that come from? I've seen it. I've seen people talk about it, but I don't know where it came from officially and who stated it. And so if somebody actually has where that was stated, it's not in this statement. So the people who are actually charging it, there's no federal charge so far, right? The FBI has just been a law enforcement assist agency. They have not gone and brought any federal charges. The state agency is bringing the case. And I see nowhere in this document. And I actually searched the document, so I posted a couple screenshots. There are 17 mentions of the word rifle in this complaint, which is only 10 pages long. And of those 17, not a single one of them has the word disassembly or taking apart or refitting or rebuilding or anything like that. There's no reference whatsoever at all. And then the second piece of it was, I guess, which is important, is that I looked for disassembly or disassembled, and it's not in there either. So I don't know where that narrative piece came from. I'm very curious. And I don't think it's necessary for anything that was described there. You know, you and I speculated kind of privately, like maybe he had, because I think you did a video, right? Where you were taking a rifle apart and you were doing it with scope rings too.
No, not me.
Okay. Somebody else had done it. Maybe they tagged you on it or something.
I'm sure they did.
Somebody pulled a rifle apart and was saying like, hey, I'm a professional and I'm a rifle shooter or whatever. I'm a military veteran. So I'm going to take apart this rifle and break it down. And then I'm going to put it back together and I'm going to put myself on a clock. And like, I'm way faster than this guy would be. Yeah. And it's like, well, first of all, nobody takes the freaking scope off a barreled action if they're trying to go out there and break it down. If you wanted it to be in two useful pieces, you might have one or two main screws that you pull off the stock. Right. Yeah.
And I don't know two action screws that you pull the stock apart. I do think that's reasonable. I think given what we see, I think we would, if he did have a stock on it and it wasn't just a barreled action, that would add 50% of the length to it. So I do think that's probably reasonable. And the fact that when we can it's a reasonable conclusion to make, given that we see that there's a screwdriver on the roof. I think he pulled that barreled action with the optic attached to it out of the back of his shirt that was being held together with that backpack, and then actually assembled it. 2 screws. It takes, I don't know, less than a minute or about a minute. And then he moves to that location. The thing that is being kind of propagated that there is no basis for is that he disassembled it and then ran.
Right.
Like
No one says that. No one's claimed that. So that's something that somebody fantasized. It's kind of like when AI comes up with something that's not real and you're like, where'd that come from? And it just, I don't know, just vapor created it. There's no reason that you would do that either. On your your ingress, you got unlimited time. You got to be stealthy. You got to be smooth. So all that makes perfect sense. I mean, look, that guy had a ballsy way to get off that building. I think we can agree on that too. Like jumping.
I mean, the whole thing was ballsy.
Everything about it's ballsy, but I think the ballsiest thing was that he looked at it and said, the best way for me to get out of here is bailing off the back of this roof at that distance. Like, you know, maybe it's just because I'm in my 40s and I don't want to jump off roofs right now. But like that looks like a really bad idea. Oh. That looks like you're about to end your career right there with a broken ankle or a broken femur. I've seen dudes do worse than that at airborne, like with not nearly as big of a fall.
Yeah.
So I mean, the fact that he didn't end up with like a spiral fracture and just like laying there waiting for the cops to come get him is wild. But that's what he did. So that was ballsy. Why you would think that you would take apart your weapon system at that point? There's no logical basis for it. And listen, say what you like. The dude managed to evade being captured for 33 hours. That was a successful egress on that.
And it would have been longer if he hadn't turned himself in.
That's right. I think so too.
Where that comes from, I believe, is that when people initially saw the video, including myself, I was like, there's no way he's got a rifle with him right there, because you can't see it. You have to stop and really analyze it and look at some different frames and realize what's happening to other body parts in that video, how his arms become see-through, how his legs are super tiny because, again, we have all this light blowing out those images. So you just gotta take a little bit more of an analytic look at it.
While we're on that particular piece, you want to talk about the I'm up, he sees me, I'm down thing for people that don't know?
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, you might as well tell them. You got more experience on what that is. But you think it's plausible to take a shot and then be up on your feet in 2-3 seconds?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
I do too.
And there's more of a time gap there. I've actually timed this. I think it's more like 5 seconds, folks. So what we're referencing for people that don't know is people are taking a look at when the shot took place, and then they're skipping over to the next piece of video, and you see people going down on the ground, and you see somebody running across the roof, which we'll just make the assumption right now that was Tyler or the shooter, right? Whatever you want to say, the alleged shooter. And basically what everyone's saying is like, that was like 2 seconds. Number one, it wasn't 2 seconds. And where people are saying is they're comparing that front footage where the shot goes off, and then people nearest to Charlie who are seeing this graphic thing. They hear a sound. Clearly people were confused by the sound at first, but then they see the reaction of Charlie. And everybody at the front, you can literally watch the wave. It actually takes a couple of seconds. Number one, there's a second of shock. Even people right up the front that are near Charlie, takes them about a second or two to realize what's happening. And then they start getting in the ground. And then if you look at the crowd from, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. We had him on the other night, but from that footage from the top floor, like people in the rear aren't seeing what's happening nearly as close. So there's a longer delay there. And by the time we switch over to this other camera where he's running across the roof, it's more like 5 seconds. And even if it was 3 seconds, that's plenty of time to take a shot, get up. He didn't clear that round. He's not actually cycling that action at all. Yep. He's just grabbing his stuff and he's moving. So it's, it's completely reasonable.
Yeah. And watching the crowd react, that's a classic OODA loop type, timeline. People see something, they have to orient themselves to what the hell happened. And then they're going to go on and they're going to make their action at the end of it. And there's a gap there of people trying to figure out, like, cause again, there's absolutely no one who has seen this in their lifetime, guaranteed.
Yeah.
No one standing in that crowd has seen that happen up close.
And they're completely taken on, off guard. Like they're not expecting this. And there's the normalcy bias. Look, folks, you can go research all the psychology on all of this stuff. And it's the more that you know that stuff, the more that you understand what's taking place. And you can at least come to better conclusions with the more information and the facts that you have with that. William Butcher, we want Marcus Gary team permanently. Look, we're definitely going to be doing regular things with Marcus. I'm sure he'll do some stuff on his own. We'll do some stuff on our own. Sometimes it does get weird when you have 3, 4, 5 people up here. But Marcus ain't going anywhere. I really enjoy having him on. He's a great benefit to the show. Crazy Fingers. Hey, Gary, fellow West Virginia here. I am going to watch the stream after the fact and join some MLB playoffs tonight. Just wanted to jump in and say that I appreciate what you've been doing with these videos. Thank you and take care. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That's a nice one.
It is. Theory: low grain, high speed polymer tip 30-06 hits high as elevation unaccounted amid aim center mass, head possibly obscured by canopy, passes through the canvas flap, suffers slight spin, deformed large entry. So a couple things. Number one, his head was not obscured by the canopy. I've showed pictures on this. I bet Kyle has some pictures of that. We can actually see from the vantage point of the shooter. I've shown it in video, and then I've zoomed in. You have a clear shot. And as a matter of fact, you have a clear shot from the vantage point of the person taking the picture, which is standing up. It's very clear. There'd be probably about a foot gap between Charlie's head. If you get down the prone, that opens it up even wider. That angle, sure. That vertical angle is going to open up wider.
It's really like, it's like a best case scenario too. If you're sitting, you're mostly front on at a center, like this is like what you train for with a paper target. I mean, you're looking at a white, you couldn't even get it any cleaner. It's a white against probably black crosshairs. Even if you just had like a crappy duplex scope, you're looking at best case scenario, and all of his movements. I had somebody tag me today and they were like, it's a moving target the size of a quarter. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? It's a big chest of a big chested dude who's sitting still and his only movements are forwards. You basically are getting probably 95% of that actual center of mass is static for you, at least on the view where you're at that distance. It's a great angle.
Again, at 140 yards, folks, it's nothing. I mean,
that's a freaking chip shot. I mean, I was doing it the other day. I was shooting 1/2-inch targets with my 22 bolt action, at 80. It's not real hard. And I'm just only because I just don't know what the holdover is for further out, but this is not a hard shot with a 30-06. It's like 10-year-olds do this with deer all over the country, like every day during hunting season.
100%. And I showed a video the other day, folks, of me shooting a much smaller target offhand. There's nothing hard about it. Maybe I'll play that again if you guys really want. Let's talk about Kirk. Now, January 6th is ancient history. All right. So first of all, it's not ancient history. It's important, and it's important and relevant in my mind to this entire case. Yeah. So whatever. Let's pretend this is my show and we'll talk about what I want.
Tyrant. That's how tyranny prospers.
Appreciate you coming on, Kyle. On with my main man, Gary. Thanks, right wing gun nut. We appreciate you, buddy.
I like a right wing gun nut.
Redhead Roost, thank you. Kyle sounds like a Fed. Well, he is a Fed.
LOL.
I
think we made a compelling case that Feds are actually too nerdy to sit and do this. Let's be real. Have you seen some of the Fed interviews that are out there? They cannot help themselves, like covering for the FBI. It's so silly.
Somebody sent me a video the other day, a link to the video, and it was like something like, there's this CIA analyst, and he's talking about the ballistics, and he's saying there's no way. I'm like, first of all, like my UPS guy has more credibility when it comes to gun than a CIA analyst. Like these guys are nerds. They're sitting behind a computer.
Yes.
They don't do anything with firearms. As a matter of fact, the average CIA agent, like they go through their normal, like our FBI guys or FBI folks, are they gun folks generally?
No. In fact, that was the story I think I told you earlier. Like the guy who did domestic terrorism investigations in Las Cruces was a SWAT guy. And my partner was a Green Beret with 19th Group. So, and he'd been at Portland and he freaking hated it. So there were 2 jobs in Las Cruces. I applied for it and he applied for it and we both got it because no one else wanted to go there. So we're psyched. We're like, we get to live in a place where nobody else wants to be. That's the kind of people that we were. So he was real happy that I didn't finish all the training I did in the Air Force. So he said I wasn't fully gay. So I thought that was cool too. So like we were buddies. We sat next to each other.
I just don't understand why you didn't want to join the military.
That's right. Paramilitary organization. Come on. We had ranks. So we had ammo that we would trade between. We would bring weapons in and talk about his stuff. So this dude who's sitting over there, I'll just call him Joe because that's his name. Joe was the agent that handled domestic terrorism operations. And he also was one of the SWAT snipers for the tactical team out of Albuquerque. And at one point he's like, dude, you go to the FFL all the time. And I'm like, yeah, because I buy guns like every week or two. And he was like, I think I could probably open a case on you just for that. And so my buddy, who I won't name because I respect him, he was like, I'll take that case and I'm going to close it. And then he said some swear words, or I think he said it in his own way. He's Mormon, so he doesn't actually swear that much. So we kind of had this little joke about it. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Not 2 weeks later, that same dude who wanted to open a case on me because I buy too many guns brought in his personal AR-15 with a Geisley trigger. And he was like, hey, man, do you guys know how to put this gazelle trigger in this thing? And I literally made a meme while we were sitting there. It's like the Willy Wonka. It's like, oh, you're an FBI sniper. Tell me how you can't even put a freaking trigger in your AR. And we did it on the table like you'd expect. And, we did it with a pen and just tapped it in. And we're like, dude, you're embarrassing. Like, you shouldn't be the guy that you think you are. You want to open a case on guys for owning guns. FBI agents are not gun people. In fact, they actually think it's weird that people own guns. They actually look at you in the same way that they think you should respect them. They kind of think you shouldn't own guns. Obviously, not all of them, not people that I was friends with. My friends would be very comfortable. We got time for a Quantico story real quick that's kind of useful?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a great illustration. I got accused of cheating when I was at Quantico because I'm a regular dude who grew up in Texas. And I have, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 150 guns in this house, something I'm not going to say real specifically, but I got enough guns that like all my kids have plenty of guns. I go to the academy, and one of the training scenarios is you knock on a door and there's a lady there who's a landlord of a guy you're looking for. And apparently the guy used to live in the house. So you're supposed to interview her and see if she knows where he might have gone. It's like a felony, whatever. It's called a UFAP warrant, unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. So you're like, hey, can we get him talk? Like, we're looking for, Marcus. And they go, oh, yeah, he doesn't live here anymore. Awesome. Can we talk to you for a few minutes? Great. So we go in and we sit at the table. She sits at the head of the table with her back to the back door, and against the back door, like right in the kind of the crotch there, the corner, is a Remington 870 shotgun with zombie green furniture. Like, it's like, yeah, right. But most people have change blindness and they don't recognize it. Like, well,
Right.
If you're training to be someone who knows what the hell's going on, like, you recognize if there's a weapon in the house, like you should see that. So, but it's not a big deal. It's a freaking shotgun by the door. So I walk up and I'm like, hey, it's really nice to meet you. Like, I'm Kyle, this is my partner, whatever. We got a couple quick questions for you. Also, I noticed you got an 870 by the door. And she was like, I have a what? And I'm like, you got that Remington by the door. My wife actually has one like exactly like that in 20 gauge. And we keep it in the pantry. Anyway, if it were to fall over or something, like before you go and like grab it, I don't think it will, but if it does, like, just, let's just communicate because we're all armed here. I think that's cool. And she's like, oh, okay. And so then we go and we sit and we have this interview. And then like the bad guy shows up in the middle of the interview or whatever. And she goes for the gun, but my partner's already there and stops her or whatever. Cause I called it out. I made sure my partner knew. And the bad guy was like 7'3" or something crazy and like 400 pounds. It was like this absurd thing where I'm telling him to, put his hands on the wall. So I cuff him. They take me out and they're like, how did you know how to handle the gun? Like, who told you about the gun? I'm like, dude, like, well, I got guns everywhere in my house. That's normal.
What that
it tells you that no one does.
Yeah. What that implies is most of the agents fail that scenario.
Everybody failed it. Yeah. And that's what it tells you. They're not gun people and they act weird around guns. And the famous story that one of my buddies had, he showed up in his office out in California and one of our academy classmates popped up and said, so I'm new here. Where do I put my gun when I'm in the office? And said it to like one of the professional support employees. And the secretary was like, I don't know. You're an agent. You're supposed to know what to do with guns. Like, it's not my thing. Like, why are you asking me questions about guns? It's not a gun organization per se, but I think it used to be. My understanding is like the OG guys actually used to be kind of a federal gun club. And they liked motorcycles and horses and guns, and that was normal. And more, I think that actually goes to why January 6th happened. We've created a new group of people who are longer in education, less experience in the world, and they do weird stuff with guns. And they just
most of these folks are a large percentage of these folks are coming from Ivy Leagues. They're coming in with masters and doctorates and PhDs and all this other stuff, which take that for what it is.
Yeah, they're not gun people, man, and so they look at you weird.
And they're anti-gun people. I mean, let's be a majority of them are anti-gun people.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
AOC 2028. If 2025 Republican FBI is corrupted, okay. God, I hope not. Largest mass shooting in the United States history. Las Vegas, October 1st, 2017. Would love to get your thoughts on it. I think that would be actually a good. We've been talking about again. I have a really good friend of mine, former Green Beret. Lives right in this area. Him and his wife was actually killed during that event, which is one of the reasons that I didn't cover it then. And I'm still a little bit sensitive about it. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I do think that is one of the most perplexing situations. And I think there's a lot of theater involved in that entire thing. And I think like if I was to ever look at any of these different situations, like that's an op, to me, that's an op. And I think there is some political motivation behind that. I don't know if that motivation was generated personally by Paddock himself, or there were other people involved, but there's that is definitely one of the strangest events in our history. And the fact that we've never received, and even my friend, he's never received any information that indicates a motive. And they're like, oh, just the FBI told him, hey, you know what? Sometimes these things just happen. And I think that's bullshit.
I agree.
I think they absolutely have a social media footprint. They've exploited all his electronics. They know that there's information that clearly they just don't think that is owed to the American people. And I think they do know his motive. And I think he was an anti-gun guy. That's what my gut tells me. And I think there's a lot of folks out there like that wanted to create an event and make it as spectacular as possible because they are very politically motivated against guns. And that is pure speculation on my part. I don't have any evidence of that. That's just what I look at that event and see. And I don't know. Do you have any 5-second comment on that?
I also find it to be totally perplexing. And again, I actually agree with you. If there was an op, that was one. I don't know what the op was. I've heard all kinds of wild stories that also tend to align with some of the fact patterns, arms deal gone wrong, money laundering gone through the casino, things like that. They all sound plausible to me, but I have no firsthand experience with it. And I don't know people who worked out of the Las Vegas office that worked that scene in a way that I could actually get information. So it's mysterious. Like my guys that are former FBI dudes, we all have the same thing. Like that's one thing that is regularly bandied around about things where the FBI really blew it and failed to get ahead of telling the truth. And dead on scene, they can release everything. Who cares? They should. I'd like to know more too.
Trump 2028 make FBIs better again.
Good luck.
I'm trying to get attention on this particular clip that I believe is impossible to deny a possible entry and or exit wound. No one's talking about. I know I sound crazy, but how do I get it to you? You can send it to me via DLPodcast at ParamountTactical.com, or you can send it to me on X, which, by the way, folks, I think I mentioned at the beginning of this, but I know there's been a bunch of new people. Make sure you go down to the description below. Go follow Kyle on X. And I'm sure he's got some other socials, but you can start there, and I'm sure he has everything else there, as well as me. So
yeah,
all our information is down below. Yep, YouTube as well. I just realized the email scrolling at the bottom. Sending now. Cool.
You got somebody who's going to Quantico and wants training scenarios. I'll give them all up. I don't care.
Gary, I emailed the link just now. You can actually, if you want to go to Quantico, we can send you an entire training packet. It'll be at our Patreon. It's $49.95. I'll get it from Kyle. We'll go.
I love that. We should do that. Here's the funny thing. They made me sign an NDA when I left, which theoretically meant that I couldn't talk about things. And then they gave me a letter right afterwards that said I was removed of all my duties and responsibilities as an FBI employee. And I showed it to my attorney and I'm like, what do you think? And he was like, That's why I started talking publicly. A lot of people asked that question early on. They're like, how are you getting away with talking about what you want? And I'm like, I don't work for them. I redefine what success look like. And success means I'm going to punch them in the dick when they deserve it. And if that's what has to happen, I'm like, they wrote me a letter that is very dubious and I think we can legally defend it. So that's what we decided to do. And they've never come after me. They did investigate me. I don't know if you know that, but
yeah,
the FBI obviously went into my email. They went into my socials. So if you've ever DM'd me, you probably have your name in an FBI file now, unfortunately. But they pulled all my Gmail, inception to date, and they did a bunch of subpoenas. But luckily, they never charged me. And I think it was actually because the January 6th Fisher case went through and that 1512 obstruction charge was removed. And I think that actually saved my butt too, because I think otherwise I'd be dealing with a very expensive federal prosecution.
I wonder if Kyle believed the theory, which is the Jack in the Box pop up and shoot that leads to nowhere inside the latch. Okay. Gary, what is the wall system behind you? Hold up displays. That is a Securit product.
I love Securit.
They make some great products. We used to be a dealer. We kind of got away from that, but not because they're not wonderful products. I know the owner. The owner and I have done a lot of great things together. We also have it at our shop. I know a lot of people have been asking me, that's what we do, folks. We're a training company. We sell freedom gear. And, I've seen a lot of questions. Well, why don't you promote your business? Well, because YouTube doesn't allow me to. If I even mention our shop or I show certain things in a video, it gets demonetized. But basically it's the name of this channel.com. If you want to support us in that way, that's what we do professionally and we'd love to help you out. Lee Javier Oswald, part 2, electric boogaloo.
We need our Hawaiian shirts.
I heard the report saying the state of Utah is going to going to live stream the trial, which means the case will never make it to trial one way or another.
That's conspiratorial. I think it probably will. I think it's going to take a little while, but I think people will see all of it.
Yeah, I think it.
I think America needs it, honestly, and I don't think they'll get away from that. I think there's too much there. Also, Spencer Cox seems pretty committed to injecting himself into the process from being all the talking that he did. He could have let law enforcement people just cover it, but the governor went out and spoke and did all the press conferences. So that's my instinct.
This is actually a really good suggestion, Dom. I think you're right. What we'll do is I think we need a couple of weeks because we still got more information coming out. I'm still going through footage. There's some new footage that's being released from time to time that comes from cell phones. It's a little hard to check the validity of it all.
I was going to say, I would wait till the prelim hearing. Honestly, you'll get everything you want then.
Yeah. And who knows when that'll be, but I do think it's worth in the next couple of weeks to kind of sit down, recap everything as quickly and as succinctly as possible. And just to help people, because I do think there's, and even myself, like I've been following this every single day, folks, but like after a while, stuff starts getting a little jumbled up in your head and you read something, you watch something else. You're like, is that how it went? And then you go back, you're like, wait a second, that was wrong. So I think people that haven't had the time in this that I have and other people have, like, I don't think the picture's as clear for them as we would think.
Well, it's good to step away from it for a minute. And that's also why people got screwed up with that disassembly piece, which again, if you hear it repeated enough times, there's a concept. Are you familiar with the concept of illusory truth?
Yeah.
Essentially, the more it's repeated, the more people just believe that it was generated. It's like Inception, the movie where they talk about it. But if you hear things enough times, you believe that it has validity because you've heard it enough times. And in the case of that stuff of the disassembly, I think that's exactly what happened. People just worked it into the story, but it's unclear if that was ever officially stated in a press conference. I'd love for someone to tag me on that if you find it, by the way, because I'd like to be able to cut that out.
Another two great examples of that is it's been repeated a billion times that there was no autopsy. That's incorrect.
Yeah.
And then when we heard a secondhand statement from, I believe it was Andrew Covelt, what the surgeon said, that information was being passed around as, the autopsy said. Well, no, this was a secondhand statement that apparently the surgeon that worked on Charlie said.
Yeah, in the middle of a fundraising post. This is the other thing. Like, also consider motive, consider like why people are doing what they're doing. I mean, Turning Point immediately went to raising money on this, which I also found very distasteful, if I'm being totally honest about it. Yeah. I did not like any of that. I don't think you need to do that. Maybe that's what Charlie would have wanted. What the hell do I know? But I think it's kind of gross that the first thing they were doing was sending out text messages and fundraising. And they were also out there promoting this like he was a superhuman made of steel, just like Superman. Like, that's so gross, man. To me,
I agree.
If I got shot doing what I do, and I think there's a very, very low probability of that being the case, but like, I don't think my wife would be talking to anybody. I think she would just take care of my babies and raise them. And hopefully someone would come in and help them. My parents would step up and that would be it. It's like, all that response, people were in the funeral, they did the pyrotechnics. Maybe that's their jam, but man, that turned me off in a big way too. Maybe I'm just too old for that stuff, but I thought it was gross.
Well, I'm going to give some of them a little bit of a pass on that because number one, there's not a playbook for that. The other thing too, if you look at Andrew Covelt and Mike McCoy, which is his chief of staff, the guy's 22 years old. Mm-hmm. So, this organization is ran by a bunch of really young guys that don't have a lot of experience.
For sure.
There's not a playbook for this.
No, and people don't die at 31 from a gunshot wound in front of a million people. So I get all that. Like I said, for me, it was a turnoff where I was like, I don't want to watch this. It's not, I wasn't the audience either, though.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
And how Eric, I know there's been a lot of criticism of how Erica has responded and reacted. Again, there's not a playbook. I think from my outside looking in, it looks like somebody that is getting out there trying to be strong for Charlie, trying to do what Charlie wanted. And
I think you get a pass as a widow.
I'm not going to allow this to affect how effective Charlie's mission was, right? We're going to keep this thing going. I'm going to go out there, put on and maybe that's right or wrong. And his funeral, it's weird. I think it was meant to be more of a celebration of life type of thing. One of these weird things.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not the audience for that. So I also acknowledge that right away. It's like, look, that wasn't for me. There were people that obviously loved it. There was a big audience. Everybody wanted to be there. That was there. Cool. Huge line outside. It was kind of one of those moments where I actually just evaluated. I went, this was obvious. I'm not the audience for that. Like they weren't making that for Kyle Seraphin or for 40-something-year-old dudes that have babies at home that are looking there. And like, all I felt was sick to my stomach about the guy getting shot.
It wasn't for Gen X. Like that's
right. That's what it is.
Was Charlie transported to nearest hospital, highest level trauma? I just saw some reports on this that apparently he ended up at not the nearest hospital and not the highest. So, you have trauma level 1, 2, and 3, the trauma level 1 being the best. Well, Kyle, you want me
to break it down real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So the way our trauma systems are organized is that you have trauma levels 1 and 2. And for the most part, there's going to be very little difference between a 1 and a 2. The difference is whether you have the capability and it's physically on site 24/7, that's your level 1s, or whether you have the capability and it's within a short phone call distance where you have the emergency suites and you can bring in everything you can think of. That's plastics, that's specialty surgeons, that's vascular surgeons, that's trauma surgeons, that's neurology, neurosurgeons. You got to have every single thing there capable. So your level 1, your level 2 are functionally going to have the same capabilities to do treatment. And occasionally, if you were going to bypass like a level 4 trauma center to get to a higher level trauma center, because you're immediately going to need neurology, you're going to need neurosurgery, you're going to need vascular surgery, which they definitely would have for all that stuff. Yeah. You may do that. The only reason that you bump into like a glorified ambulance station is because you need blood right now and the person's bleeding out. And I don't know that that was the case in what we saw there. It looked like he was exsanguinating, but probably not. That probably wasn't the primary thing that was going to take him down. It was probably CNS interaction, just based on the posturing I saw in the body. So yeah, end of the day, like medics have to make a decision. The people who are driving were actually in the SUV and they mapped out a hospital. They make the best decision they can. If they didn't have an ambulance already on scene with a route pre-routed, look, when we used to do SWAT hits, I'd sit in a specialized vehicle that was meant to take either operators or injured suspects. We had ways to detain people and keep them in cuffs and still treat them. And we had the GPS plugged in we had it plugged in for our air intercept route where we would put a helicopter down.
Yep.
We had the route to the level 1. And then we also had a backup route if we needed to just go somewhere to stop in and get blood. And if it was less emergent. So yeah, the fact they didn't even have all that stuff on scene was already a bad scenario. If they bypassed a hospital, I'll give them a pass on all that stuff. Big time.
And ultimately, I don't know that would have mattered, but
I don't think it would have mattered at all.
Same thing as you, like, in the military, anytime that we're doing a mission, and this is stateside, whether we're training stateside or overseas or actually in combat theater, we have a primary, alternate, contingency, emergency,
that's right,
medical plans. Like, we have it all mapped out. Anytime that we were going overseas and doing training, did a lot of time in Southeast Asia, we would have all of those. Hey, what's a level 1, level 2, level 3? What's the nearest? What are our capabilities on the ground? But again, I don't know what these guys' standard operating procedures were for their med plan. Didn't seem like they were operating with a really sophisticated med plan to begin with. They didn't have an ambulance. Right. And look, they may have reached out to the university and asked for an ambulance or local ambulance company and or medical services.
Yeah, or all for all we know,
it might not have been available.
It could have also been staged in a different parking lot that wasn't like close access to the stage. There's a lot of reasons that could have happened, and so I don't want to piss on like a Monday morning quarterback level, but generally speaking, you want accessibility to your ambulance. That's the reason why you have the ambulance there. I think the state law requires an aid station with like BLS only, but if you're going to have that many people and it was in the heat and you're in the sun, the odds of a heat casualty are decent. The odds of someone who's old having some kind of a cardiac event, it happens. You don't plan for someone getting shot, and I don't think it would have mattered one way or another, but it does let people know that there's some planning that needs to go in these things.
Yeah. Alan says, I think if there was a conspiracy, it was executed online. Someone went in these online rooms to find someone to conspire with, not an on-site. I agree with this. Look, I think there is zero chance that his other people that he knew didn't know about this, including his furry transvestite boyfriend. I also think there is a really good chance that people in his Discord chat and some of these other online accounts and people within his inner circle, I think this was almost kind of I don't know. I think he was bragging about this probably within his inner circle, or at least planning about it. I think it was kind of a sense of bravado, and that's, again, speculation. I also think there's a good chance that there could have been more things involved than just letting them know. But we're going to find out, I think. They're exploiting all his electronics and figuring out what's going on with that.
Let me just jump in a little taste.
Yeah, please.
I've had some sourcing already kind of let me know that this is the case. There is a conspiracy, or at least there's a investigation into a conspiracy, and the conspiracy is 100% exactly what you said, and it's online. There's some additional things that we're going to find out, I think, in the next couple of days. Some of the stuff I'm not at liberty to talk about because it's not my story, but I've been read up in them, and sourcing is pretty credible. A lot of these online platforms, and I'm going to be very broad because, again, I don't want to scoop anybody's story that's been talking to me, but Discord, Reddit, Facebook, even X, to a lesser degree, there is infiltration, and there's infiltration of sophisticated AI capabilities and botnets that are indistinguishable from human interactions, will carry on for years, and they're operated by nation state level actors, and they are not operated by like some a-hole or some Fed that's trying to jam up a case. But those are real things too. So in the online world, let me just make a cautionary statement to anybody that listens to this video, and this is really useful. If somebody agrees with whatever your crappiest idea is, particularly if it involves violence, and they're willing to help you do it, and they're willing to help you do it for the exact amount of money that you actually have, and they can pull off things like get things you shouldn't be able to get, like thermal scoped machine guns or something, or explosive devices that have remote triggers, or other things that you just know are probably not all that easy to grab. If someone does that, and particularly if they're willing to meet only during business hours, that's a Fed. That's what they look like. That's what an online undercover employee will look like for various federal agencies. They will oftentimes only want to meet you during specific hours because I'm right.
I'm not getting the overtime.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. There's no overtime.
It's funny because how ridiculously true it is.
Yeah. So listen, they catch low-hanging fruit. That's what federal agents catch. That's why you end up with those things like what happened with the Whitmer scenario. Like they get, there's a joke in most law enforcement academies. We only catch the dumb ones. So caution to anybody that you don't know who you're interacting with on the other end of the line. The other possibility is the more sophisticated stuff that, it's like, oh no, I know this person, but you've never talked to them. You've only texted with them. And then suddenly bad idea theater starts coming in. Just consider there may be more at work there, and you may not even be dealing with a real person. I generally assume that when people are arguing with me online that I'm just dealing with a bot or some asshole that's like hanging out in the Philippines. That's my general thought. And it works really well to de-escalate your mind. Don't get emotional about the stuff, but I think we're going to see a lot more about the online conspiracy end of it. And I think that you're exactly spot on. Not only did he talk about it, but there was some other people that had some planning. There's a real possibility that somebody else did the site survey, because that's a big question, right? Like, how did he know where to go? How did he know to drop there? He didn't attend that campus, supposedly. That's when your team comes in. That's when people who have gone out and done the scouting and, they're your Reddit buddy, or they're your Discord buddy.
And folks, there's nothing. Could that indicate a level of sophistication? Yes, but that process in of itself is not sophisticated. Like it's not hard to do.
Even the costume change bit. Like, do you ever watch any of the? Have you watched any of the terminal lists and any of that thing, or do you have a?
No, I haven't watched it, but I'm aware of kind of what they do.
It's somewhat enjoyable. I think they do a decent job of portraying the characters. There's a prequel to it that's out right now that people can see. That's called The Dark Wolf, and it's the guy who betrays the SEAL teams, whatever. Long and short of it is, they're doing legit OPSEC stuff. They're doing surveillance and contact break. They're doing donning and doffing of various different things while they're trying to break contract with the surveillance team that's coming in. So costume changes, switching out a jacket, going from light to dark to light, switching a hat or not having a hat. Those things are out there in the public sphere. So that level of quote unquote sophistication doesn't indicate that you have, professional tradecraft. It might just mean that you watched Jason Bourne, or you watched like whatever movie that was out there that was interesting, that are getting more and more good technical consultants on people who did the work, who actually know what it's like, and they're briefing it up.
And that some of those technologies, like some of these face masks that you can just pull over, like, dude, those are like, all this stuff is more readily available. It's cheaper. It's accessible. People know about it because of all these different movies, and because people are growing up playing, Call of Duty and all the things, right? So I think, generally speaking, a lot of these kids are much more sophisticated when it comes to understanding tactics and some of these other capabilities than we give them credit for. And, I'm not surprised to see what we're seeing with this case in particular.
Dave Grossman actually covers that, I think. I mean, that's part of what he says in On Killing. He's basically said that a lot of these sort of video games have desensitized the capability of violence, and they've made people more sort of aware of tactics and things, even if they've never done them.
Well, I love the term that you keep talking about, and I think describes a lot of different things that's relevant, and it's what first person hero syndrome.
Yeah, it's main character syndrome.
Main character syndrome. Love it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a real thing, but it really should be, because there's a lot of people that think that the movie of the world revolves around them. It's like the Truman Show, I guess, but like they're aware to it. So everyone has to serve their world. And that's where people come up with like, you need to give me all the information right now. It's like, dude, who are you?
But
like,
it
you
also,
don't even know the family. What are you talking about?
It's also kind of indicative of the psychology of somebody like Tyler or these other active shooters, where it's like, I'm here to do this. I need to make this big impact, whatever that is, negative or positive.
I think men have always wanted to make an impact. That just like, killing a completely innocent person that you've never met is kind of a weird way to do that. Usually people that were full of anger and hate, they would just join the military and they'd get to go do it overseas, not go to jail. I thought that's what people did.
Disney, what's up, girl? Gun expert Steve Wolf on News Nation said the gun was easily collapsible with the push of a button. I've never seen more gun experts in my life than as of late. I'll just be honest with you.
So bad, man. I'm
sure Tyler did it, and we have to be reminded of some of the conspiracy possible AI generated. It's I don't think we need AI. Like, some of these things, people are just going to come up with it on their own that have no real kind of nefarious motivation or anything like that. And then there's people that are going to come up with a bunch of things because they're grifters. There's some people that come to mind out there that are professional grifters, and anytime one of these events take place, you see the usual suspects come up and they come up with the craziest theories, and it surprises me at how many people actually jump on board with those. And it's because there's something inside of us that want to see that. And I think part of it's because we don't want to be duped by government. And I think there's, we see the things that happen with JFK. We've seen, there's been lots of conspiracies that I think that we at least all generally accept to be true. And those things happen. They happen in the past. They're still happening in different ways. So I think there's a natural proclivity for us to look at ulterior or alternatives for that, right? And some people just get excited about it. It's a dopamine hit. I think that's a real part of this too.
This is a mental exercise for some people, and I think it's also kind of a coping mechanism for how awful it was. It's like, if you have to sit there and deal with like the world is full of darkness, a lot of people have never experienced like any of the dark stuff that's out there. They haven't had people die in their hands, and they haven't seen really evil stuff happen for no particular reason, like super decent people dying, and they go like, what do they process? It must be the Jews, or it must be a trapdoor, or whatever the crazy stuff people come up with.
Yeah. Ballistics are baffling. Why didn't any security detail instinctually draw, I think is what we're trying to say, upon a gunshot potentially an ongoing threat? Because that's not what protective details do. What they do is exactly, number one, there's like this gunshot that I don't think they were prepared for mentally. It is a personal security detail. It is like the primary threat is within 5-10 yards, reaching Charlie. Handgun is the most likely course of action, biggest threat. So that's where their attention is. And as a matter of fact, as a PSD team, if their attention was the rooftops, they would not be doing their jobs. And then secondly, nothing that happens there piques the idea that like there's something suspicious. Their job is to get their protectee to the ground. I trained security agents to do exactly this, protective details. It's their job to get the protectee to the ground. And of course, now they have a medical situation. And so that is where their 100% of their attention is. They're body bunkering this guy. They're on top of him. And on top of that, they're treating his wound.
That's a terrible scenario. Like, think about that, right? Because you've got to move and potentially be under fire from an elevated position. I mean, that's an absolute nightmare.
You're not pulling a gun. Again, somewhere in that, it's like, oh, that was clearly a rifle shot. It sounded distant, because I think it did. I think if you were there, you would have been like, that wasn't like from 20 feet away, right? There is no scenario where it even makes sense. Or as a matter of fact, I would find you to be incompetent if I saw one of their guys pull out a gun and start scanning the freaking crowds.
They would have to be a DHS agent or something to do that.
100%. And on top of that, if you don't have a target identified, like, you shouldn't be pointing a gun at anybody. So there's that. And their number one priority was to protect their protectee. and it went from protecting to, hey, now we got to treat and evacuate. So that are the two things that they should have been focusing on, and that is what I see them focusing on, is treating and protecting. And I know somebody said, well, they threw him to the ground. That's exactly what you do. That is textbook protection work. You get them to the ground as quickly as possible, you body bunker them, and then again, if there's a medical incident, you take care of that right there. That's care under fire. It's basic stuff. Here we go. Kyle, what do you think about no exit wound? Thanks.
So we don't have the medical examiner report yet, and I think that's why anything we say is very speculative. But I still think that the most probable thing is what I saw from the beginning, and I think you and I were, without ever comparing notes, came up with the same idea. I think that there was some kind of ballistic panel. I think it was probably defeated by a rifle round. So the odds are it's level 3. Because again, you said, what's the threat going to be in that environment? It's a handgun. Someone produces a handgun, close range. That's what we've seen. The last time that went down, like that's what happened to Reagan. Somebody has a low caliber weapon, some pissing at like 25 Raven or something, and they run up and they try to just do this body dump. So you want the vitals protected. It looked to me like that's what happened. And there's plenty of reasons from looking at it. And I don't need to watch every angle every single time. There are plenty of ways you could wear body armor underneath a t-shirt. I've worn what they call extremely low visibility body armor. That's level 2. It would get shredded by a rifle round in a heartbeat, but it would change the rifle trajectory and it would slow it down because there's a certain amount of force that it takes to overcome even a ballistic panel that's not going to stop it. So you're going to have different behavior, entry wound, exit wound. I'll wait for the medical examiner. I don't need to know the answer to this. At the end of the day, like, none of this stuff is going to change anything about what the probable cause statement says and whether or not it's reasonable. Bullets do really strange thing. And I think you've covered this. I think I've seen you talk about this. Entry wounds are famously tiny. If they're behind body armor, they're basically invisible. They're going to stop any sort of bleed. But 30 caliber rounds, 5.56 caliber rounds, they can be invisible in somebody who has any amount of adipose tissue up on their surface. I've seen 5.56 rounds where we couldn't even find it. It turned out it was like underneath a nipple. And you're like, holy crap, it's a pinhole. And there may or may not be an exit wound. And it could be catastrophic inside if it hits the right bones and it moves around. Like, bullets do wild stuff in real life. Anybody who's ever shot a deer knows that. If you shot an elk, you know this. Like, you can hit on the spine and have some catastrophic blowout on the other end, or you can hit on the spine and it just disappears in the body and you have to go dig it out later when you're doing the gutting. So just a lot of different things can happen.
Yeah, there's an unlimited amount of angles. There's an unlimited amount of other variables. I agree. And folks, I just saw a new bit of footage yesterday that actually confirms in my mind what we're seeing is a ballistic panel. And going back to what Kyle says, like that extremely low vis ballistic protection with level 2 or whatever else. Look, there's level 3 semi-rigid plates that are less than about a quarter inch, 0.20 is what those are. And a level 3 would stop and or deflect a 30-06 round. So there's some other things. I got other test materials coming. I know it's something that people want to know about. I'm curious about it because I'm pretty sure about what I see on there. And I know there's other conflicting information and statements. What's weird to me, I will say this about this. So to me, there's like this cognitive dissonance when it comes to the body armor thing. There's people that are like, I don't care what anybody says. It wasn't a 30-06 round.
There's a lot of that, by the way.
And then there's the exact same people would say, Erica or X, Y, and Z have said, we've already confirmed there's no body armor, but you won't believe anything else. If we say, hey, we've confirmed there's only one shooter. No. They're lying about that. But yet somebody wearing low pro body armor as high profile as Charlie, that is a stretch to you.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Everything else is acceptable. And folks, by the way, we've actually never heard a direct statement from Erica. I've heard it reported secondhand. And then on top of that, I think there's also a good chance, I've talked about this, like if they had a relationship with the body armor company and he died with that body armor on, A, they could have NDAs in place. B, they could just be protecting the company. Or C, while there's some semantics that could be played with this, there is technically a difference between body armor and ballistic protection and or even a a bulletproof vest, right? There may be some semantics being played with that on that as well. So I just saw another video. I'm gonna kind of talk about this. I'm gonna go through the timeline of the body armor thing, because there was definitely confirming reports early on that he was wearing body armor. And then we saw this narrative change, almost like this cleanup kind of like, no, he wasn't wearing body armor. It was weird. It is still weird. So
also, Gary, it'd be crazy for him not to be wearing some low pro body armor. I agree. Listen, I used to sit in even non-dangerous surveillances, and if it made sense that we might interact with something that could get sketchy, the level 2 stuff, it fits like a t-shirt. You can get it in white carriers, you can get it in black carriers, so it works really well with whatever t-shirt you're wearing. I could wear it with this t-shirt, probably not this one, but like most of my t-shirts. Charlie used to wear really loose t-shirts.
Yeah. And
so that t-shirt was very loose. It wouldn't necessarily show. And I think it would be almost irresponsible to imagine you're interacting with a crowd that big with as high of profile as he had and not have that. It's a nothing. It doesn't add anything to your, it's all upside.
Well, and the other thing too is like people's idea of body armor is kind of stuck in 2005. Like you don't know what the technology is available. Like there's a whole host of protective options out there that I know that
it's not even just freaking Kevlar, like, which is what people think. I mean, there's Dyneema out there. There's a company. There's a company that is in that's in Woodbridge. No, it's not in Woodbridge. Where the hell is it? Fredericksburg. Have you ever seen them? They were called Ascot. They'll sell you like an $8,000 bespoke suit with body panels of armor in the jacket, and they'll also put it into a vest, so there's overlapping coverage. And it is small, flexible, and it is less than 1/4 of an inch, and they'll get level 3 out of it. Like wild stuff is done. And they'll do paneling on the pant to protect your femoral. Like there are dudes doing what, and this was going back a couple of years ago. We looked at buying one for one of our sources that was going to travel overseas, and we were going to do it as kind of a gift, like a $10,000, like, isn't this cool? You're getting this like wildly bulletproof James Bond suit. And there's companies doing really, really bespoke.
And how long ago was that?
Yeah, that would have been in like 2020.
Okay. So
2019. And it's advanced since then.
Yeah. Sure. So what I can tell you now, folks, is number one, like there's companies out there that does body scans that give you extremely form-fitting, extremely low profile, extremely concealable body armor. And again, it could be wrong. Part of this is definitely some speculation, but I will say I saw a video yesterday that I will tell you, to me, it all but confirms it. I'll post that. The other thing too, there is confusion about body armor. Like we sell body armor. I'm kind of nerdy when it comes to body armor. I stay on top of these things. Just so we're clear, folks, there's level 3A, which is basically handgun and below. All right, that's level 3A. Level 3 is rifle rated. You guys go look up the NIJ standards on this. Rifle rated, and that is going to protect you up to 16 feet. So that's rifle rated, not including green tip, not including any sort of armor piercing round. And then you have level 4. Level 4 is going to protect you from most armor piercing rounds. But level 3 is more than enough to actually stop any sort of 30 cal round or most of the 30 cal rounds out there, including 30-06. Because I think there's a lot of confusion on that.
I even had some old chicken plates from Vietnam that I found in a barracks one time, and it was actually says on there, it's like it was rated up to like AP like 30-06. It was super heavy, like old crappy stuff. But yeah, like the technology from like the 70s to now, it's insane. It's gone from things that look like you were wearing, a piece of a potbelly stove over your chest to the point where it's like now you're just sliding something on that might as well just be a shirt. And
they have flexible level 3 body armor that is 0.20 thick that you won't see under a t-shirt. You won't see it.
It's stupid.
Kyle, what about George Zinn?
Yeah, I think there's statistical anomalies wherever you go. I think that that's a really weird one. I don't know what the hell he was doing there. That guy seemed like he was kind of like, there's some people in the world that are just shit magnets. I don't know how else to describe them. They just show up at places that are weird and they go seeking it. The odds that somebody was there, somebody was like, it's billions to 1. I'm like, it's a human being. He's portable. Sounds like he lives in the area. He was a known guy. There were a lot of people. Yeah, there was a lot of people that were in New York for various reasons on 9/11. I'm sure many of them are now in different parts of the world. Probably some of them don't live. Like I have in-laws that were in New York on 9/11 and now they live in Connecticut. Like, what are the odds? They live right down the street from Sandy Hook, right down the street, man. Like that's how it kind of feels to me. I think it's just incidental. And he was a known wacko in that area for years. He'd called in bomb threats. He'd been on the radar for people there since 2013. I think that wackos do wacko stuff. If you've ever been around a major event, people who are not well, they don't react to things that happen like other people do, and they stand out, and then cops go and key in on them because it's weird.
And then I guess he was actually arrested on child porn charges after
Was he
that.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's the reports that I've seen, and those are, I don't know, actual news reports. Take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, checking. Okay.
Let's do the same thing with the FBI and other 3-letter agency Hexas just implemented in the Department of War. I agree, man. I'm going to end up posting a reaction video or go over some of the things that he gave in that speech. The speech that was needed for our military for like the last 15 years. It is, hey, we are war fighters. We need to hold our leaders to a high standard of physical fitness and capabilities. And we have had nothing. The military has went downhill since 2008. I can tell you that, and that's one of the main reasons I ended up getting out of the military. What they tried to do to special operations, and we didn't realize it at the time. We just saw them cutting standards. This is a fact. What we didn't realize is they were reducing those standards so that they could allow women into special operations amongst other MOSs, and that was the predicate for that. And we're like, what's going on? They're just trying to make it easier to become a special operator. And then, and then it's kind of all revealed there a couple years later. Where
I've got some memes from the guys that were in the Air Force Special Tactics community that are all just like shit talking. the number of women they were trying to punch through there for various reasons. Women who quit over and over again, both verbally and by action, and they got continually reinstated in pipelines. It was absurd. It happened everywhere.
I had friends that were instructors in selection, and the same thing. They had directives of making sure people got passed.
These people are going to pass. And everything about that is antithetical to what that mission set looks like. So that's gross.
Tell some more training scenario at Quantico.
This is your $49 Patreon.
So happy to hear the professionals stating what I have been screaming in the chat since this event unfolded. First, CK talk, then my BP and Pulse did not elevate. Great guest. Looking forward to finding on Twitter. Gary, are you still working on recreation stuff? When will you cover it? Yes, I am. I'm still waiting on some of these materials. Some of these materials that I ordered, they take a couple weeks to get in. I got all the ammo that I'm looking for. I ordered well over $1,000 worth of different various ammos. We're going to test some of the stuff out. Nice. I want to know some of the stuff from my own knowledge. We're going to play around with this stuff. I have, we have anatomically correct ballistic dummies. I think there's some constraints on what you can really find from ballistic gel. It's not a perfect analog for human tissue for a lot of different reasons, but we're going to do what we can. And I think it'll at least be interesting. And that's what we do on this channel anyhow. So I think it's good education and information. Gov Cox said the rifle was disassembled on the roof during a press conference. I believe he misspoke. Cool. Gary, I keep meaning to thank you. Your video on assembling my secured Agile's gun safe. I'm glad Kyle's a gun guy. Kip Stoll's 3 favorite rifles, pistols. Sure. I think Kentucky pistols. My 3 favorite pistols. All right. Walther PDP is definitely the number 1 right now. I love my Walther PDP, specifically the full-size steel frame. That thing shoots like some really high-end 2011s. Next to that, I've some highly modified Smith & Wesson MMPs. And then next in that would probably be Glocks, which is one of my least favorite, but most dependable. I think Glock is pretty much the AK-47 of the pistol world. I will say there's a couple of the new HDKs that I had some clients have that I tested out that I'll probably be getting and testing those out. So looking forward to that. As far as rifles go, I'm a big fan of the Caracal. We just got in some of the Sons of Liberty Mark 1s. That thing is one of the best rifles I've ever shot, period. I just did a video on that. You guys go check that out. And yeah. Kyle, what's some of your, what's at least one, your favorite pistol, your favorite rifle?
I hate that I shoot my Glocks as much as I do, but I've got so many hours on them. I got so many, so many trigger pulls that they always fire. I got a Glock 45 MOS with a Parker Mountain Machine comp on it and a Parker Mountain Machine threaded barrel that I like quite a bit. So if I'm going to draw out and play at a range and try to do speed drills and stuff, I like shooting a comped Glock 45. I've got my Glock 19M, which is not supposed to exist. And I had it milled when I was in the Bureau, and they got pissed about that. And I ended up getting written up for it, but I put an RMR on top of that. And I like shooting that thing quite a bit. I told them I was in a pilot program, and they said that was a lie, not under oath. They said that was a false statement. I was clearly winking at my boss. I'm like, I think I'm part of a pilot program. And he was like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, like, don't ask any more questions. But I've shot that thing out to 200 yards, and I'm like probably lucky shot more than anything else, but I'm a big fan of that. I've got a lot of time on my Glock 19M. And then I got a Staccato P that I like, and I've been shooting that a little bit more. I've been trying to figure out if I need like tighter springs on it. And rifle systems, I got a Geisley Quantico Special. I think most of what the FBI does is pretty gay, but they knocked it out of the park with that particular rifle.
And is it like a Geisley Super Duty?
It's a higher quality Super Duty. I've shot that thing in group to like 5 rounds at 1.5 inches at 200 yards, and I thought that was pretty stellar for a damn gas gun. I've got a Razor on top of it with an RMR sitting on top of that, and I did the whatever the SOP mod kit was. One of my buddies was a Green Beret and ordered it up for cheap. But I really like the heck out of that one, and and I also have a gun that I haven't shot yet, but I need to. It's a Shield Arms folding. GB buddy of mine built it up there, and it is a 6 arc, and I haven't done a lot of shooting with it, but it looks super fun. So I think I sent you a picture of that at one point.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. As far as bolt guns, folks, we just started making our own line of custom bolt guns, but we're also a big fan and a dealer for Masterpiece Arms. Again, I got videos on that other stuff. I try to avoid talking about that stuff too much on the channel because they will demonetize it and they will shit on this video. This guy is trying to taking you into the weeds. Well, the weeds are important. Like when we're talking about complicated things like this case is and trying to get to the truth, that's one of my biggest problems. I am a detail person, which I think has been beneficial in this and hopefully trying to convey some of at least how I interpret events. That's the problem is like too many people, like I don't care about the details. Basically what you want to be said is, hey, there's 3 shooters. Things don't line up. Like, well, details matter because
and they were all Mossad.
Yeah, detail. Yeah, of course, Israel Mossad. Details matter, and I think everything we talked about was great. I thought it was very educational for me, and really, this is what this is about. It's for my education. No, look, we're doing it for you too, folks. Like we put a lot of effort in this to bring this information to you. Man, this has been awesome. Kyle is super intelligent. I don't know about that.
It's like 50-50.
He's a smart dude. Lifting the veil hidden in plain sight. Sight YouTube video. There appears to be a squib or white padding under. I covered this. All right. What I think you're seeing underneath there is a undershirt. All right. That is not, first it was smoke. Now it's a squib. Like, I don't know how to entertain these particular ideas. I'm trying to do this as respectfully as possible. The idea that this was faked or it was an explosion under a shirt or it was some sort of device, that is not what we're seeing. Mm-hmm. And the only people that can propagate that, I think, are people that are just, and I get it. Like, I understand that there's people out there that haven't been shooting guns for 20 years and do the things that I do. And Kyle has the information and the experience that he has. It's easy for us to take things for granted. It's like, dude, this is common sense. A lot of the stuff isn't as common sense as we think in our minds. So I want to be respectful to these squib ideas and things like that, but it's just not plausible. And in my mind, it's silly. And it just doesn't make sense either. Like there's no reason for it.
It's the same problem of folks that are out there going like, oh, it's a really difficult shot. And you're doing it offhand, and making that same shot. It's the same thing about people that were talking about Butler, PA being difficult. Like I just told you, like I got a gas gun that groups sub MOA at 200. It's not a challenge. I could get my 8-year-old daughter behind the gun and make them do these things. So I think we've lost a lot of normal skills that men used to have, like going out and hunting and, putting an animal down and knowing what happens. And so you end up with people in cities that have never seen a rifle system and their only exposure is either a video game or watching it on TV. And so they have these wild ideas about what is and what is not capable of, 10-year-olds in Alabama, we'll call it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. That is a good analysis. I like there's so many people that just don't know what. Yeah, I mean, like they've lost touch with what was kind of normal. Like a lot of people have some basic, and I will say the other part of this, there's a little bit of a Dunning-Kruger effect too when it comes to, look, I've been deer hunting my whole life and I know what things look like. Well, you know what the stuff that you use looks like. And quite frankly, even if you deer hunt for a living, that's all you do, that kind of limits your ballistic expertise, knowledge, and experience to some extent. So take that for what it is. It's not like, I'm not trying to be a dickhead, but
people should be able to accurately self-assess. It's like, hey, have I killed a couple deers? Yes. Have I killed some other animals? Yes. Have I shot multiple calibers into living flesh? Okay, yeah, cool. Have I seen what happens when people get shot? Have I been near it? And so if you start checking more and more of those boxes, your experience goes like, okay, cool. And then the last thing is like, is there a cop that's looked at this and said that this is obviously a setup? Because I don't see any cops coming out and saying this is not how investigations go. If anything, they say that they've revealed more than you'd expect. And that's also really important.
I agree with that. Let's see. Thank you, Gary. All the guests you bring on to make this channel a legit channel for analysis for the chat community. So one of the things that you guys really help me do is again, whether it's in the comments here or the chat or whatever else, or comments in my video, I start seeing these trends of information gaps, either information that I didn't provide or maybe I don't have the answers to. And that's been very helpful, right? And in your emails and stuff too, where I see like there's this trend of where a bunch of people believe X, Y, and Z, and I either know for a fact that it's not true and I can address it personally, or I don't think it's true, but I can get guys like Kyle on here to kind of debunk some of those. So again, the point of this is like educate people as much as possible so that you can start off with like, we're just separating the wheat from the chaff. And if you start off with a foundation of truth, now we can a little bit more intelligently speculate on some other things, because part of this does require some speculation because we don't have all of the facts. So if we're just going to call bullshit on everything, like we need to start out with what's not bullshit so that we can decide what is bullshit. If no body armor, still a 30-06 possible from roof possible. It is possible. I've never said it wasn't possible. I still think like if we don't have body armor, like we need an explanation of some different rounds. I think it's extremely, like, even if it was a full, let's say it's FMJ. All right. There is some statistical anomaly out there where we can say it's possible, but that's just what this comes down to is like, statistically, it doesn't make sense. Almost anything's possible. Just like Kyle said, there's weird things that do happen when it comes to ballistics. There's variables that we can't see, can't take into account. Everything from, a weird primer, a damaged primer can cause some different things. Propellants either damage or something's going on with that. Like we have precision rifle rounds. This last course that we just ran. All right. We had a bunch of guys out there shooting. We had one client. This is factory ammunition, some of the best out there. I'll just tell you, it was Hornady ELDM. It was actually 115 grain, 6mm. He had like 10 rounds that went out the gun and got like 50 feet out and literally just exploded. Like we just saw a poof. Like, where'd the round go? And I'm back there spotting him like, that round didn't go anywhere, man. Like, so there's weird things that happen. It's just what we're seeing is super atypical. And that's
lob another one in there because I've been considering this. Remember, this was a supposedly like a gifted weapon, and it was given by like a grandfather or something. And I start wondering too, was it old ammo? Was this like really underpowered older stuff that was sitting there, or maybe because I've had people hand me, like I've got a hand me down like 1917 BSA Brit 303. Yeah. I'm nervous to go shoot it because the ammo that was given to me with it, I don't know the history on it. I don't know how long it's been sitting there. It looks fine. I mean, it doesn't look corroded or anything, but people have loaded for different chamber pressures. We're talking about an older gun. Anyway, there's so many different factors that could pop into this thing. And again, then the body armor thing becomes a real question. And we haven't really ruled this thing out. I honestly have to say, it's really possible that they got we are talking about the ATF here. We're talking about dudes who sometimes get stuff wrong like that. So if there's a typo on what was written on the round, it's also a possibility that we saw something like that.
Well, and the other thing that is a real possibility, again, it's a low, I don't see it as the first thing that we would look at, but I think we need to at this point is we don't know how much experience that he has or his grandfather has or whatever else. These could be hand-loaded rounds. And once we start getting into hand-loaded rounds, like the possibilities are endless. What I will say is that I'm getting ready to go through, I already went through the report, but I'm getting ready to publish it. But if you guys go, he's tagged me on a bunch of stuff. If you go to my X, there's a guy named Michael Cobb. He's an engineer. He's in Germany. I wanted to bring him on, but he's done the best, most bulletproof analysis of the audio. And he basically has determined that the round is going at least, I think he said between 800 and 1,000 meters per second. So I think we at least have a range of the velocity of this round based on the sound analysis. And I'm going to publish that. He's published it already. You can go find Michael Cobb. He's tagged me in a bunch of stuff, so my name will be on it. But I want to go through that, and he asked me to present it. And so we at least know what kind of velocity is. What we don't know is the bullet type or the bullet weight. And those have a completely different, can completely change the terminal ballistics. So take that for what it is. I take gummy bears as body armor after watching them stop through 8 on Pew Pew TV. Would Kevlar fibers cause a damage seen to CK's spine? Could a jacket fragment be the cause of the neck wound? Kevlar fibers won't cause the damage to CK's spine. What it could have done, and again, this is where this video comes into play that I'll show you guys, is that it could prevent the bullet from exiting. Even a level 3A, after it has hit some soft tissue, slowed down, and especially if it's hit bone like the spine or anything else, I do think that we would have enough energy dispersed where some basic ballistic armor on the back would prevent a exit. And I'm at this point, that's what I think happened. And I'll show some videos tomorrow where I go over that.
You think it got stopped in the sandwich?
Yeah, I do. I'll show you a video. I can't show it on here because
yeah, got you.
It'll get restricted, but I'll show you right after this the video I have on that. And I'd like to get your analysis because I think you can clearly see a ballistic panel in the back. When doing ballistics, please try the canopy canvas a few feet in front of target. Thanks for all you do. Best info out there. Thank you very much. Bev Munoz, thank you. So appreciate your channel, especially tonight's live. Hope this helps with your expenses related to providing content. Thank you, Bev. That's very nice of you. I'm still on a payment plan for what Kyle charged me to come on here. So
that's great. Somebody was asking what's in the tumblers. I thought that was my favorite question. I saw it straight by.
Like, I didn't see that. What's in my tumbler is tea.
I had tea in this one and I had water in my other one. So I'm doubled up. Yeah, but nothing exciting.
What would be the bullet drop rate be at 160 yards? Depends on, again, this depends on the round. It's not much. Hell, I can pull up 308 and tell you right now, but it's actually 140 yards, about 138 yards from my calculations. It's not going to be much. It's going to be a few inches. And again, if he's zeroed at 100 yards and he ended up taking a shot at 140 yards, there's a minute of angle. So about 2 inches between 100 and 200 yards with 308, and 30-06 is going to be very close to that. So half of that, we're talking about an inch. So there's going to be about an inch of drop between 100 versus 140 yards. So it's not much. I'm glad you guys color coordinated. Great conversation. And Gary is moving in the right direction. Have a great weekend. We planned that out.
That's right.
We planned that out. We'll go through a few lives real quick, and then we'll call it a quits, guys. There was no armor. It hit neck angle because C2, the very vertebrae down, C7, T1 is reported from the surgeon that did autopsy from turning point. That doesn't rule out that armor was hit first in a couple different ways. So, yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that it really matters. And look, here's a fact. Everything is happening so fast, and it's not what we see. There's a lot of things taking place in between the frames that we can't see that make this even more perplexing. That's just a fact. There's a possible shot at 502 feet near the stairs and fits the audio analysis. I disagree with that. I have a really good audio analysis guy that he's done this well. I still look. I'm gonna contradict myself on this. I did a lot of work, or I had spent a lot of time on phone calls with audio analysis companies, guys that did this professionally. 5 different ones during Butler on the initial days of the Butler. All five of them came back with the exact same data points. They all came back with different conclusions. Some of them said there was multiple shots. Some of them said there was one shot. Some of them said it was from like 600 yards. Others, like 2 of them, put it exactly where where Crooks was, rather. So, like, I'm going to present the audio data that is given to me, and I think this is probably some of the most solid out there. But with that being said, I'm going to add that disclaimer. Like, I'm not a big fan. I don't know that this is a super exact science.
I don't think it is at all. There's so many variables that they're not going to be able to calculate unless they're in the space.
Yeah.
And they map it.
Yeah. This is a question that keeps coming up, and where Charlie's nipples so hard they pierce through the body armor. That's cute and that's funny.
Dude.
I will show you something.
I hope it's nipples. I'm gonna be disappointed if it's not.
All right.
Here it comes. I feel like
if you see that 8x10 panel, hand me that real quick. So let's look at this. This is an extra large panel.
Are you gonna show nipple?
For scale, I am 6 foot. All right. And Charlie was 6'5". Even when I put this extra large panel, which is not what I think you'd be using, that is my nipple right there. And that is my nipple right there. There's a cardboard one that I have set out. So this is an extra large, pretty much one of the largest panels that you can get. And this is a titanium plate. This is an 8x10 approximate, right? So this is what I think something with low pro is what people are going to be wearing. An 8x10 panel. They come in different shapes. This would be a swimmer's cut, which is very common. You can also get these in more rectangular, but all of them are going to be a little bit faceted. And again, the other thing about these is you can get very similar armor and flexible armor, level 3, that will stop 30-06. But I want you to look at this, folks. Like, I got like 2 inches before we get to my nipples. And again, Charlie is 6'5". So the idea that we see nipples, to me, just indicates, and you're saying that as proof of one thing or another, just indicates to me that, quite frankly, don't understand some of how body armor works, right? So,
and its purpose.
Yeah.
Like, so most people, I think, are really familiar with wraparound full body armor. That's going to be side coverage. It's going to be overlap. Like, this is standard for law enforcement. That's what you see. But the fact is, if you're wearing low vis, you're trying to mitigate the most obvious frontal and the rear, maybe, and you're not. You're assuming that your mobility and the fact that you're lightweight and you're agile are going to compensate for that. So
you were
a lot
still
of that stuff
assuming a lot of risk, like
tons. Yeah.
Low
vis body armor is not like the way you go into a fight. It's what you do when you think there's not going to be a fight and you just want to take some extra precaution.
Yeah. What I will say is there's some. Again, I think the panels on his back were larger. I'll just say that, and I think it's very clear in some of this new footage. But we'll show that. I'm trying to figure out how to. I got to censor that so we don't get killed by YouTube on it. All right. Let's see. There's another one. Who reported smelling the shot? Wind direction? Why can't they verify shot local with reports? Thanks. I think they have. Like, I think that's the problem, is like there's been so much confusion that's been put out because of all this wild speculation without any real physical evidence that's kind of muddied the water. But number one, we just had George Webb on last night. Look, there's a lot of things I disagree with George Webb on, even as we talked. But one of the things he said, he actually talked to an eyewitness, and George Webb doesn't believe. I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to mischaracterize what he believes, but he doesn't think that what killed Charlie came from that location. I think he does believe that Tyler was there or somebody was there that fired a shot from that location. But what he even said was that an eyewitness that he talked to in the crowd said the shot, what he heard, came from that location. So, and there's lots of other folks, and we've had a couple other folks on that were there, as well as video evidence. Again, you can take a look at the video from that second floor. Everybody looks exactly in that direction. I've played that video here multiple times in lives.
And the cops swore to it. So,
yeah.
I mean,
that's a great point too.
Like, here's the deal. You guys have to understand this too. You lie in a probable cause statement, and it becomes that you've sworn something under oath that is not true. You have giglio forever. That's a Supreme Court case that decided that you now have to disclose that you've made false statements under oath for the rest of your career. That means your career's over as a law enforcement officer. You don't get to testify anymore ever. So you're done. You're either doing desk detail or admin from here on out. Nobody takes that more seriously. And so if you're writing up the PC statement with a known false statement that like an officer said, I heard a shot and I went to where the shot came from based on my belief, and I found a shooter's nest, that lie is preposterous in so much as it's going to cost him his career. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that some random cop on a university campus was willing to throw it all away for some nonsense because somebody asked him to swear to something that wasn't real. All that stuff defies credulity to me. Just saying.
I agree. I'm so glad Gary has thick skin, would not be as believable he let emotions win. I mean, sometimes, look, guys, I'll be honest with you. I want to headbutt this desk as hard as possible. But no, it doesn't bother me, folks. People can say whatever they want, and it doesn't really change anything. Is composite projectile, not FMJ, a possibility? Depends on what you mean by that. There's lots of ballistic tips that now use like a polymer projectile tip, or if you're talking about a composite. So frangible ammunition essentially is a composite. Yes, that is a possibility, and it would increase the chances of seeing what we're seeing if they used a frangible projectile. That is true. Please like and share. Absolutely, guys. Look, we like the stuff. Share it. Go follow Kyle. Go follow us on X as well. We appreciate that. Body armor deforms once hit. No. Depends on the body armor. And what we do, especially again, there is flexible level 3 body armor, folks. Listen to me. I know everybody's stuck on ceramic body armor because that's what they saw in 2005. I have all those plates over there. And then we have a composite body armor, and then they actually have flexible body armor. The company that I sell body armor for that I really like does a really good job. Super light, super effective, level 3 plus, all kinds of different stuff, right? They make super thin panels. Yeah, it's going to deform, but we see deformation taking place there, but it also is going to go back to where it was. So there's lots of possibilities with the body armor thing. It doesn't mean it's right. I could be completely wrong on it, and I'm okay with that. I don't think I am. And I don't think we've exhausted the possibilities of that. And I will say, again, it goes back to what I've said before. It is the unifying theory. It's the one thing that makes all of this whole situation more believable with what we see with the physics. He took a lot of energy, more energy in like his movements and everything else that takes place. The other thing I will say, like, one of the things that's really weird is that when he's hit, his whole body does go upward. And again, we're talking about a round that's coming down, which is why I believe we have a round possibly skipping off the plate, skipping off some sort of ballistic protection, some sort of ballistic resistance, and hitting him in the neck. If you watch slowly, his body does go upward. And so there's some things that are outside of body armor that just becomes more hard to explain. No exit wound with 30-06, and body armor does cover that. And we haven't. And number one, it's probable, and we haven't ruled that out yet. I would just, it's the most believable thing. And I don't know why they're denying it. I don't know why. Thanks, Gary and Kyle, even though I don't trust you very much. Pretty entertaining, informative stream. Well, thanks, AJ. I'm glad we're at least on the same page. We know where you stand with us. Yeah, Stephen Gardner. I did watch that video today. Not the one where he interviews Andrew, but I watched the video today from him. It was very informative. I know he talks about some information that he got, but none of that, everything that he said, regardless of where bullet fragments ended up, doesn't rule out the possibility of body armor. Nothing that I heard in that interview. rules that out. This is exactly right. Not all armor covers nipples. It's true.
That's like should be a tagline for a body armor company.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna make some merch, some
should.
Paramount merch. Not all body armor covers nipples.
Just put it on the shirt. Let people wonder what it means.
So it'll be a black shirt. It'll be a white outline of body armor, and then it'll say nipple here, nipple here.
Just little X's where the nipple should be. Yeah. And then the back is in some sort of script. It just says not all body armor covers nipples.
Yeah, we're gonna put tassels. Zen can't be just a loony appearing everywhere just because he happens to wander across the U.S. is whatever. The guy was in the video for 9/11 claiming Muslims did it. Here he claimed responsibility. Look, there's some really strange things about George Zen, and we can't rule out that he wasn't involved somehow. But you also can't rule out the idea that, look, what I've said on this, I do find it very effing weird that he just spontaneously, as soon as the shot goes off, while everybody's like trying to figure out what's going on, he knows exactly what's going on. It's like, I did it. I think that's weird. And I don't know, maybe we'll find out that he was a co-conspirator. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibilities. What's your thought on that, Kyle?
I think it's just as probable that he's a crazy person, and that's how crazy people react. They react. That's what they're crazy for. If you've ever been on a street when people, and I used to deal with it way more as a paramedic than I wanted to, there's a reason why mentally ill people are mentally ill. They don't react the way that normal people do. They do things that are totally strange and unexpected. I had a homeless guy jump out when I was taking a jog with one of my buddies who's a PJ, and he jumped out of a doorway from nowhere to two grown men who were running and said, he said, "Find my wife, you're my lawyer, buy my car." Like in the middle, like for no reason, to two strangers, it's like, what would make you do that, dude? Like people do weird stuff when you deal with mentally ill people, especially people that are, maybe he's traumatized. It sounds like he's had some criminal past. He heard a shot and immediately jumps up and says something stupid. Maybe he thought that was funny for all we know. It wasn't funny after the cops grabbed him, but I don't tend to put like whatever was going on with that man doesn't have to have anything to do with what happened in the scenario. And I think that's the most probable thing, to assume that all people that are in the same event are somehow connected to each other. The only unifying event could be it was a moth to a flame. One guy went there because he was mad about hate speech. The other guy was there because he goes where there's a crowd of people and he wants to say, Zuni things and act that way. That is far more probable to me than the two of them. Like, why would a man, what was that guy in his 60s?
Yeah.
Why is it like a boomer dude who has a history of being a weirdo to the cops somehow involved with a 22-year-old that's married to a transgender, cross-sex hormones, lover? All that stuff is that, like, you got to draw like some real aggressive lines for me to get to those two being involved.
I mean, at the end of the day, whatever conclusion you come to with George Zen is speculation, right? We don't have any evidence for or against. It's weird. There's no doubt about it. I don't
think we're going to see that in the conspiracy at the end of the day. I think it's going to be people from the Discord chat that's going to be real ugly, and you guys are going to find out that there probably were some people that were doing some dark things and encouraging it, and then we'll get there. But
I actually skipped the one that I actually had up there. Daniel Steins. The funny thing is that the security team, the FBI, the surgeon would all know if there was an entry wound from the back. Caches lying clearly, and why? I'm not exactly. I guess you're saying that you're in the camp, Daniel, that you think that there's an exit wound. There's an entry wound from the back. Look, I've covered it ad nauseum. There's zero evidence for a round coming from his 4 o'clock, which is where I think a lot of people are saying there's so much evidence against that, and there's so much evidence for a round coming directly. I can't, with what the evidence we had, we can't say it came from Tyler's exact location, but there is a very narrow angular window to his 12 o'clock, Charlie's 12 o'clock, that round came from. And I think it's obvious and clear. And, I don't know what to tell you about that. All right. Goose. In some photos from the rear crowd, his head is partially covered by a canopy flap. Reasonable to assume his head is blocked by a flap from slightly higher elevation. It does look like that even from the side. He had a towel, and he may have thrown that towel over his head. Even that profile picture that we see from the guys that are taking that picture of him, what looks like him laying in the prone on the roof from the side. We don't know. Like, we don't currently have any photos or video of looking in that for that perspective, right? So again, it's speculation. We know he had a towel, so I don't know what else to say about that. All right, we're going to hit these last two, and then we're going to call it a night. No more man bipples. Thoughts on the Ruger RXM and Springfield Echelon? I have no experience on the RXM. The Springfield Echelon, people have reported a lot of problems, quality fit and finish, and just quality control problems with the Echelon. I don't know if they've gotten that ironed out. I know when they first came out, I know a lot of people obviously in the space, and I talked to several gun tubers, and they weren't too impressed with it. But you know what? Springfield does a good job fixing things, so it may be something completely irrelevant at this point, and they may have fixed all those things. I haven't tested out the RXM. I got 6 months worth of guns. Now I got a freaking mosquito trying to bite me in the face. I got a whole bunch of products and guns. I got like a year's worth of freaking products and guns that I need to review that I'm way behind on. And so take that for what it is. I got lots of reviews and videos on all that stuff, long range stuff, carbine stuff, pistol stuff, med stuff, you name it. And you can go check out our store. And if you need something, training, we do all this stuff. Well, listen, Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, I think some of the information definitely hit the right people. Some people won't be as receptive to it.
That's always the way it's going to be.
That's what we're going to do here, folks. We're going to give you the information, the truth as we see it. And if we get something wrong, we're going to come out. We're going to do our best to correct the record. But integrity is important in this space. What we do here in the business, integrity is everything. So we try to uphold those standards and do right by you, the viewer, and give you as much information as you can, and present. Again, we've had many people on here that I completely disagree with. I think we have a duty to present other theories and challenge those theories, and people can come on here and challenge what we have to say. And then at the end of it, you guys can figure out what you believe. So that's what we're going to do. And even people that we disagree with, we'll have on and let them talk, and we'll challenge them a little bit, and we can walk away and figure out what we think is true. Well, like I said, stay right there, Kyle. But everybody else, listen, we really appreciate you tuning in. We really appreciate your support. Hopefully you found this helpful and informative. And we'll see you again soon. I don't know when our next live stream, definitely Wednesday. Make sure you join us every Wednesday at 7 or 8 p.m. Sometimes I move that around a little bit, but it will be every Wednesday. And then we will have some from time to time. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, and make sure you select all. And hopefully you'll still get notifications, even though YouTube doesn't allow that sometime too. But that is what it is. All right, folks, have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready.